Okay, we're going to try that again. That was an interesting problem. I still had the internet, but on my streaming computer, I have it plugged directly into the Ethernet, and the Ethernet port stopped working, but I still had Wi-Fi on all my other devices, just nothing to my computer. So here we are. We're going to try again, and we'll see. I reset my router. I reset the browsers, which there was actually a Firefox update pushed apparently sometime this morning. Maybe that was it. I have no idea. That was weird. Let's see if we can get through this time. Good afternoon, Stinger. Good to see you. Good to see that the chat is working. Yeah, so I don't know what that was all about, folks. But here we are now. Can't even remember what we were talking about. I think somebody was asking me why I don't debate Wyatt Claypool on Ukraine. I think I got cut off somewhere in there. And we could have that conversation for sure. We're going to disagree. Some people are just completely impervious to the idea that the Ukrainian regime is not guiltless in the conflict. That Zelensky's not a good guy, that the Ukrainian regime is completely corrupt, that the Russian intervention, considering the cultural and ethnic cleansing that was going on in the East for years since the coup. We're talking about a illegally installed regime that then did a farcical election and then had to do a re-election to try and get the results they wanted. We're ethnic and culturally cleansing the East. That basically by the standards set by NATO, the Russians were completely justified in intervening. Because if we're going to judge them, we should judge them based on something. Our own behavior, for instance. And what does NATO do? They bomb whoever they want. They bombed Libya, killed Gaddafi. Libya is a long way from Europe. It's a Mediterranean Sea away. There's Syria, there's the intervention in Egypt. There's all kinds of stuff that NATO's been doing around the world. But if we're going to judge Russia, we should do it through the litmus test of our own actions. And also ignores the fact that peace was on the table 3 times that I can think of that the Ukrainians were willing to get on board with. But at the West's behest, they torpedoed it because they wanted this war. So, I could debate Wyatt about that stuff, but we're not going to agree. He's a bit of a homer, right? He's kind of a neocon. And that's the game he plays. That's, the reason I like Wyatt is because he's very determined. In spite of the fact that he tried to run for the Conservative Party of Canada and get their nomination and looked like he was actually going to win the thing and was summarily turfed by the CPC, and he didn't give up. He just redoubled his efforts to grow his channel and grow his audience and grow his influence to the point where they can't ignore him anymore. I admire that determination. He's also a young man. I think he's 25. He's certainly not much older than 25, but I'm pretty sure he's just 25. I have a soft spot for the guy. And this is the thing. There's him, there's Boardman, there's some other people. We can actually disagree and still respect each other at the end of the day. With a lot of people, you can't do that. Most people it's absolute vitriol and hate. You're a hero, and then you're a zero as soon as they disagree with you. Faye Knox, good afternoon to you, Faye. Good to see you. You've been with me a long time. Charlottetown, welcome back, Frank. Thank you. Hopefully, we're not dropping any frames now, so maybe a reboot of the router was all we really needed to get this thing going. Yeah. All right, we can close that because the chat's working. Scott McLean, yes, he's back. Yeah, I don't know what that was. Super weird. Super weird to just have one device completely cut off from the internet while everything else is still working. And then initially, I reset the computer, didn't bring the device back, unplugged the Ethernet, plugged it back in, that didn't work. Rebooted the router, still had no internet, and then rebooted the browser and had internet. I'm not really sure what my Firefox browser has to do with my streaming or my Ethernet connection. And the weird thing, too, was as soon as I reset, as soon as I rebooted the router, all of my personalized settings in Windows reset to default. What is the router? Which I reset from my phone because it's Starlink. So it's controlled by an app on your phone. So I reset the router from my phone and it reset all of my Windows settings. Pretty strange, but we're here now. Patrick Brown says, I'm just jumping in. So sorry if you already addressed my comment from the previous video, but you should debate why on Ukraine and Israel. I think it will be a very productive discussion. Yeah, I did address that. Also, there is the Israel thing. It's like, you know, I talked in yesterday's video. I managed, there's, actually, we're going to go to the browser. We're going to look at X. We're going to look at a bunch of stuff because we're just going to be here for a while. I was pre-recording last night. I was pre-recording this morning, and I'm like, you know, sometimes I wonder if I should just do a live newscast. I don't know if it's going to have the same impact. Like, I look back at last Sunday's live stream. It was 3 hours long. You know, it had 3,000 or 4,000 viewers after I terminated it. I don't know if people are going to want to wade through something that's long, but there might be merit to a live show. I mean, I have to admit that streaming activates my curiosity because I haven't really done that professionally. I just do video editing and make a pre-recorded thing, and I do a lot of planning and I do a lot of reading and research before I put the thing together. Streaming is a whole other ball game. I mean, you can make cutscenes, you can have all kinds of things going on, and like there's a lot you can do with it. So I don't know, there might be something there. But as far as yesterday, I managed to offend the people who really seem to want to whitewash how terrible a job the man with the mustache did in Germany in the 40s. They don't really want to acknowledge that even before the war began in the East, because a lot of them, they like to default to the communists did all the bad stuff in the East, but don't like to acknowledge that the euthanasia program began in 1939 in Germany, where they started offing the mentally ill. And actually, and this was another thing, I offended a bunch of liberal people because I said that the euthanasia program in Germany began pretty much exactly the same way that the Canadian euthanasia program is beginning. The similarities are off the chart. They deny it, but it's history. It's known history. And then what happened after the war began in Poland with the general government and the mass movement of people, and not just the Jews, but the Poles and the German view of the Slav and the German view of the Balkans and the German view of the French people. And I shouldn't say German, I should say that the Nazi view of those people. Like, all of these things are real. And so in one video, and this is the point I'm trying to make, in one video, because I talked about the Israeli plan, they leveled Rafah, bombed it out of existence. Now they plan to build a great big, what they're calling humanitarian city, which is really a concentration camp, and they're going to take all 2 million of Gaza's residents and they're going to cram them in there. And they're looking for the international community to fund and run the thing. Meanwhile, the Israelis, I'm assuming, seems like a logical conclusion, will get the benefit of Gaza, will get the benefit of the vast natural gas reserves, get the benefit of the oil, and get the benefit of a brand new coast to develop. And this was from the defense minister of Israel. And there's a lot of people who are upset in the ADL and in the online community because you call it a concentration camp, but I don't know what else you want to call it. I mean, it literally fits the literal definition. You take 2 million people and you concentrate them in a camp, and you can call it a humanitarian city if you want, but it's a concentration camp. So in the same video, I had to continue the conversation about actual history as regards the Nazi regime in the Second World War, and I managed to piss off the revisionists when it comes to Germany and Israeli advocates at the exact same time. I have a talent for this because I just don't subscribe to narratives. And there was another point that was made, that there was a fella in the comments. We should probably just go to the comments and just start going through them so I can respond to each one individually, because we're going to have time today. It's a live stream. We're going to go for a while. But the fella said, you don't trust the government, but you trust the version of history that the government gave you. The government doesn't give you history. They give you a narrative. We're able to find out. Like, we're able to learn about Dresden. We're able to learn about the fact that Churchill sank French boats and sent 1,250 French sailors, allies of the British, to their graves in Oran, Algeria, to prevent the Nazis from getting those ships. Didn't mind killing 1,000 Frenchmen. We can learn about Churchill in India. We can learn, to this day, even though the victors won, and they have their narrative, and you have your Foundation series on the History Channel that don't cover this stuff, we can learn about how terrible the Allied occupation in Europe was on the people of Germany. We can learn about the internment camps that they in turn created themselves. Even though they won the war, and even though they have their narratives, we're still able to learn this body of information. Likewise, we are still able to factually learn about the German regime and what they were up to prior to 1941. But it upsets this narrative that some people have subscribed to, that Hitler was a good guy. I guess we're going to dispense with the man with the mustache stuff. It's not like we're monetized, so we don't have to worry about being demonetized. There's people who like to deify him, and they like to whitewash all of the bad stuff, which is there. It's very real, and we can learn about it, just like we can learn about the First World War. Even though there's a narrative that emerged victorious out of the First World War about the villainy of Germany and about the villainy of Austria-Hungary, we can learn the truth, and the truth is there were no good sides. It was a European war brought about by the alliance system. And even though they came out of the war with this villainy narrative and the Versailles Treaty, which created all the circumstances that led to the 1930s and the 1940s, we can still learn the truth. Another vein, we take Christianity, for instance. We have been living under 1,700 years of Roman universalism. And all of the various edits that have been done to Christianity since the ultimate rise of Roman universalism, the Reformation and all the various branches, the Anglican Church, which I just don't understand. I mean, the king couldn't get a divorce, so he created his own church so that he could grant himself a divorce. And there's millions of people who go to Anglican churches to this day, even though that's the common route. I'm not judging anybody for it. I'm just saying, what I'm trying to say here is that all of the various branches of Christianity are built around the tree of Roman universalism. But people often forget that in the first 300 years of Christianity, before it was known as Christianity, there was all kinds of various viewpoints. People often forget, for instance, that during the Dark Ages, where supposedly the world was lost, and we tend to think of civilization as having collapsed, that in the East, across Central Asia, and into the Middle East, Christianity was on a marching mission. And there was a huge branch of Christianity that was highly successful that doesn't exist anymore. It's long gone. And it was long gone, or it wasn't Islam that necessarily replaced it. So while we think in terms of Christian history being just European history, centered around Rome, there's actually this whole diverse history. And in particular, when you start diving into the first 300 years of Christianity, you encounter things like the author of the first Bible was written in 114 AD. Oh, why is his name escaping me right now? His name is escaping me. That's terrible. But he believed, and the church that was founded by him believed, that the Old Testament God and the Father of Jesus were two separate entities altogether. Isn't that interesting? So, my only point here is I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything except for the fact that in spite of 1,700 years of Roman universalism, we can still learn about Gnosticism. We can still learn about Mithraism. We can still learn about, why am I forgetting his name? We can still learn about all these various branches. We can still read the Gospels of Thomas. We can still read the Apocrypha. We can study these things in spite of the fact that there's been 1,700 years to actively push these narratives or these separate branches of Christianity out of existence. Another, for instance, there was never, in the time immediately after Jesus walked the earth, there was no church. There was no Trinity. There was only meetings in basements and in secret locations. There was no gospel. There was no official canon. And there's a lot to be gleaned there. The only point I'm trying to make is, whether it's Germany, whether it's Israel, whether it's the First World War, the Second World War, the Russian Revolution, anything that you can think of, the official narrative that comes out of the victor, you can still find the information about the other points of view. So this idea that I just believe the government and what the government tells me, or that the information to learn about things is completely inaccessible because the government has a narrative, is completely false. Go back to the chat here for a minute. Let's see what we can do here. Johnny, please explain what Frank is noticing. What does that mean? I keep seeing noticing in the comments. You're not wrong to point out what Israel is doing wrong. We need more people talking about it. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about both sides. I mean, I talk about all day I have talked about all day how Hamas, how Hezbollah, how the Iranian regime, and the things that they do wrong. I talk about that. But you need to, what often happens is when you're talking about, when you go and you talk about the crimes of Israel, or you talk about the crimes of Hamas and Hezbollah, the other side is just like, yeah, but the other side is worse. Like they raise the specter of the bad things that the other side does as though that's some kind of shield against the justified criticism that you're leveling against the side that they support. You see, I can't do that. I can't sit here and hide behind one set of evil to justify another set. I'm just here trying to tell the truth about the entire thing. I think what Israel is talking about doing through their defense minister is very clear: concentration camp in Gaza. Now, I've also said war is hell. Hamas and Hezbollah, these are people who are sworn to the absolute destruction of Israel. This is warfare. And there hasn't been, I don't understand this idea. I don't even understand the concept of a war crime. I know what it means, but as soon as hostilities break out between two nations, or two ethnic groupings, or two religious groupings, all semblance of civility goes out the window. You're off to killing each other. I mean, look at Napoleon in Spain and the horrible things that the French army did to the Spaniards, and the horrible things that the Spaniards did back to. It is some of the most savage stuff you can read. Or study the Battle of Stalingrad. Just darkness. It's just it creates this sinking vortex inside of you that threatens to suck all the light in. I think this concept that sides in warfare, one side is noble and one side is not noble. That's homerism. That's like taking a home team. That's like a sports approach. I'm not here to do that. Whataboutism is the word I'm told. That is what would describe that. It's an immature line of argument, and to me, it just delegitimizes any argument the other person had. That's from Greg's game review. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think we should be able to have a fully rounded conversation about everything. You know about Gnosticism, surprised and delighted. I know a lot about the history of the church. I've studied it immensely. I don't talk about it because you want to talk about something that people can't handle. People cannot handle the truth about that. And when I say the truth, I'm not talking about I as the possessor of infinite wisdom. Because in my own life, I know how it works in my life. I know I'm a spiritual man. I know I have a belief system. I know who I pray to. But it's still a mystery to me. So I'm not... The last time I tried to have a conversation with a friend, someone I'd known for years and years and years, they thought the world of me. So one day, I decided, you know what? This is a trusted individual. I can have a conversation. So I started a scriptural, and I knew they were very religious people. So I started a scriptural conversation and mixed in some history. I'm just like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And here's how I conclude, and here's what I see. I went from being somebody that they loved to somebody that they reviled. They completely turned their opinion of me on its head. They compared me to a flat earther. They called me ignorant. They called me arrogant. They basically contradicted everything they'd ever said about me, all because I raised some scriptural questions that struck at the core of their dogma. And that friend is gone. They didn't even attempt to try and fix things with me. I gave them almost a year. They didn't even try to fix anything. All because of one scripturally based set of questions and opinions that arose from them. Without me actually saying that I had my own dogma. They accused me of getting ready to set up a cult through my channel. It's another reason why I never or rarely ever talk about religion or faith, except in a cursory manner like we're doing right now. Because if I dug right in, I don't think people can handle it. I really don't think people can handle it. People can't even handle criticism. People can't even handle criticism of Hitler. They can't handle criticism of Israel. They can't handle criticism of Donald Trump. The man is covering up the whole Epstein. His administration is covering it up. And you can make any excuses you want. As a matter of fact, let's look at one of those excuses right now. Let's see. Let's try and... Okay, we got the chat back. Ooh, that looks terrible. So we're going to have to change that. If we want the chat to be here, we're going to have to change its opacity so that we can still see. There we go. Let's do that. And then we got to go back over here. Yeah, this was it. Everything's going to reload because I had to reset. Alex Jones claims the Trump administration holds explosive blackmail material on key deep state figures and has struck a secret deal to keep it quiet. According to Jones, the agreement allows Trump to pursue his America First agenda without interference. But if the deep state breaks that deal, Trump will unleash the Epstein blackmail files. So there's Alex Jones once again running cover for a president who has broke his word to the people and covered up the Epstein thing. The thing about Alex Jones is he has all of these insiders and this information, and he just passes on what they tell him verbatim. It's got him in trouble multiple times in the past. I can't make excuses like that. It's the same as everything else we're talking about. I'm not going to sit here and be a homer for any politician. Faith alone for the Father above. If you're going to have faith at all, that's where you put it. You put it upstairs to something beyond yourself. Never put faith in men. You can work with them. Maybe you can trust them for a while, but you should always be verifying. The Epstein thing is being covered up. That much is clear. Fort Knox, the live streams, the auditing of the gold completely disappeared off the radar. Doge looked like a public relations effort. Musk has been swept aside and pushed out of the administration, and Doge has been largely buried. $5 trillion debt cap increase. Record deficits on the way. No talk about fixing it. We're doing arms for Ukraine now. 2 or 3 days ago, we got word of that, so we're just going to be shipping weapons over there. So much for the peace initiatives. Now, admittedly, it's not a full-scale regime change war yet against Iran. Trump has successfully managed to navigate his way through that without getting drawn in. There's rumors of an amnesty. Trump came out yesterday, as I covered in my video, and he said there's going to be no amnesty. Well, that's a good thing. But I have to remind people of all the things that Trump said that now he's saying the opposite of. So if he's capable of changing his mind, and then once he changes his mind, he deeply resents anybody asking any questions. So when it comes to Epstein, as a for instance, when a CNN reporter of all people, because they never wanted to talk about Epstein, asks him a question about Jeffrey Epstein, he gets triggered and angry. Why are we still talking about this guy? Biggest blackmail operation in the history of the world, selling little kids and young women, as Trump called them, into sexual servitude with the elites of the world. And he's upset that people are asking questions about it. A core plank of his campaign was actually getting to the bottom of this, and now he just wants to sweep it aside. And he dares get triggered and call people names for still wanting answers. I'm not going to write a blank check for that. Just not going to do it. Critical thinker says, you reap what you sow. What fills your mind will fill your life. You can have goodness in your heart or continue to look for happiness infinitely. Yeah, you know, and the longer I do this, back to video making, and I mean, I'm working on this all day. I'm reading, researching, I'm figuring things out. I'll tell you, picking beets was easier. Growing garlic was easier. Because I carry this. That's why I have Atlas is the introductory few seconds of my video is Atlas. I don't know if people know that. Carrying the world, because that's how I feel. That's how I feel. And I felt that before I got back to video making. I felt that before I was even making videos, because I'm addicted to learning and trying to figure out what is. Not necessarily having perfect ideological answers. I just want to understand how things actually are and how things actually were. And I have an obsession with it. You know, I don't really have hobbies. I don't have other things I do. You know, if I'm not online making videos, I'm offline reading books. Multiple books at the same time. I'm reading a book right now about the foundation of the Saskatchewan Party by Gail Krowitz. And it just talks about how the Liberals and the PCs came together and wanted to create a center-right, right-wing party to counter the NDP, who were going to win elections forever if there was vote splitting, and how they came together and doing this whole thing. And, like, I just want to understand that. I would like to go to the convention in November, and I want to know the history. Like, it's just what I do with my time. If I'm not with my kids and my family, this is what I do, and I'll tell you, it's... Do you ever get hard headaches? Absolutely. I get headaches right here, right in the front of my head. I've actually got a little one right now. And I get headaches when people come at me with stupid arguments that I know are stupid, because I put in the time to understand things. And then I got to deal with people who literally have a cursory understanding, or they've watched a YouTube documentary put together to support a narrative, and I can pick holes in it all day, but it doesn't matter what I know. What I know is often completely useless. Society is built on worshiping false gods, movie stars, sports players, politicians. No one will save you. You must save yourself. Yeah, well, it's what we got to work with. So, you know, we work with it. Again, I ask, why is there a goat statue covered in $100 bills saying, "In Trump we trust," in Mar-a-Lago? I've never seen that. I've never seen that. Let's check that out. Goat statue covered in $100 bills, Mar-a-Lago. Standing on top of a black rock. Oh, wow. Is that a real picture, though? That doesn't look like a real picture. Standing on top of a black rock. In God we trust, replacing God with Trump. The Idols base says, "I love you," along with Trump's signature. The GOAT is real and is part of a project known as Project GOAT, which stands for Global Offensive Against Trafficking. Because of this, the claim is true. The project is an initiative of athletes and causes, an organization in Florida that pairs athletes with philanthropy, blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. The symbolism is there, though, isn't it? Never knew about that, folks. Crazy. Anyone getting voters' remorse, which country are you talking about? Are you talking about Canada or the United States? Because I think we're full of it. Like, look, I don't really regret taking a spin on Trump, even though I didn't vote for him, because I can't. I'm a Canadian. I know Canadians who went down there and did vote for him, though. That's how easy it was. But I couldn't do that because I play things square. I play things ridiculously square. I don't lie, and I don't cheat. But it was worth a try because you knew what you were going to get with the Dems. You knew what you were going to get with Harris. he said a lot of good things, and on some of them, I mean, progress is still being made. The mass deportations of illegals, as long as they're not amnestied, as long as that is proceeding, that's probably, for the American people, that's probably the most important thing. As long as that keeps moving forward and we don't end up seeing World War III come out of it. Just actually waiting for my wife to pop her head in and say goodbye. She's taking the kids swimming while I do this. I think that's imminent. There's still progress being made in some places, and I think illegal immigration is the most important one. But the Epstein thing is deeply disconcerting to me. The fact is, there's the ceasefire that's happening, which isn't really a ceasefire. I mean, Israel is still bombing the hell out of Gaza. The Houthis are still attacking shipping, as I showed in yesterday's video, in the Red Sea. They're still firing missiles at Israel. My personal opinion is, and I'll show you my personal opinion is not just based on this, but we'll go to the J feed. How far down do I have to go? Doesn't matter. Somewhere in here, there's an article talking about how Israel is preparing to bomb Iran again. And it's not getting a lot of media attention, but I mean, the whispers are there that hostilities are only on pause. Maybe enough for an Israeli election. I don't know. Netanyahu's biggest political opponent came out and told him to basically stay in the United States, because I don't know, maybe that's something that's not getting enough attention either, is that Netanyahu has been in the United States for a while now. Multiple meetings with the president. There's also let's see here if I can find it. French intelligence chief, U.S. overstated Iran strike impact, and we don't know where the uranium is. Now, some people would say, you can't believe the French. You can't believe anything unless it comes out of U.S. intelligence or comes out of Israeli intelligence, as if U.S. intelligence and Israeli intelligence has been totally reliable all these years. It's so funny to me, as a for instance, that when it comes to U.S. intelligence, these are the people that were behind the colloquially named Pissgate, when Trump was supposedly getting golden showers, courtesy of Putin, and Russiagate, and all this other nonsense. And people can recognize that the intelligence community is infected and lying, but then when it comes to their pet projects, when it comes to their preferred leaders, they're capable of flipping their switch and being like, well, this is what my team says, so you can't believe what anybody else says. I don't have that luxury. I can't do that. I have to look at everybody, and I have to take in the input from everybody and try and come up with something. I think it speaks for itself. Around the Fordo nuclear site, prior to the bombing, a line of trucks was seen exiting the facility. We're talking 20, 30 trucks. And the reasonable guess is that they were moving the enriched uranium to some other location before the bombing happened. And it seems the consensus outside of the United States and Israel is that the enriched uranium survived and has been moved. And that's what this French official is talking about. It seems reasonable. The Iranians knew the strike was coming. They had a chance to move it. So we don't know where the uranium is. Maybe Israeli intelligence does. Maybe U.S. intelligence does, and they're just not telling us. But those intelligence agencies insist that it's all done. Who's telling the truth? In my eye, the lineup of trucks that successfully drove away seems to speak. John Bolko says they was carrying it away. Yes, they were. I believe so. I am currently in contact with unhoused people in Kelowna. Not one is a recent immigrant. Yeah, it is. Yeah. That's a big subject. Maybe we'll get into it. There's some articles I've got open. The only truth you will find is in the Bible. Do I want to touch that? Because touching that is what gets me in big trouble. Pointing out the inherent contradictions between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And pointing out that Jesus, in the canon that comes down to us from Roman universalism, This is the miracle of Christianity, in my mind, is that even though it has passed through all of these human hands, and what comes down to us as canon comes from politicians and powerful people. So the Council of Nicaea and all of these other various councils that decided what canon was, the creation of the Holy Trinity, which was a creation. The Trinity didn't exist for the first 300, 400 years after Christ. It was created to explain some things that were in some of the gospel material. Even the divinity, the concept of Jesus as the direct Son of God, was something that wasn't agreed upon in the early days. This was debated and contested. And a product of Roman universalism was the determination that that's how it was. But people don't want to hear that. There's reason to believe Marcion, that's his name. The Marcionite heresy. There's not too many Marcionites left on earth today. But in the early days of Christianity, it was as popular, or actually I would say in certain eras, it was the most popular branch of the Christian tree before Roman universalism took over. And Marcion believed that the God of the Jews and the God of Jesus were two different beings. There was a decision taken by the Roman Universalists that they needed a religion with, they needed a dogma, they needed a religion with deep roots. So there was debate, and I'm just telling you what happened, okay? Don't get too triggered. There was debate. Was the Father of Jesus, the Abba Father, was he a different being, the head of the table, the highest of lords, or was he the same as the God of the Old Testament? This was a contested thing, folks, in the early days. And of course, we know how the contest came out. One of the interesting things that I don't think people realize, I don't think a lot of Christians realize, is that most Jews, and I've had several conversations with, what do you want to call it, Judaic Jews, practicing Jews, Orthodox Jews, Old Testament Jews, that don't believe that Jesus is anything, folks. Jesus is nothing to them. They await their Messiah. And Christianity to them poses a direct threat to their faith, because Christianity seeks to convert them to Messianism, to Messiahism, to the belief in Jesus. And there are many practicing Jews who believe that Jesus is Messiah, but they don't hold with the New Testament. Like, there's a lot of diversity when it comes to belief systems, and one of the most interesting things about it all is that every individual person who subscribes to an individualistic religion is determined that theirs is the only way. Whether you're a Protestant, you're a Catholic, you're a Muslim, you're a practitioner of Judaism, you're a Buddhist, you're a Hindu, whatever your brand, you're absolutely convinced that you have the secret. And all that does for me is humble me. It humbles me. I can't be convinced that I know everything ever when it comes to issues of faith. I have a personal experience. I am convinced that there's more than me, that there's something beyond myself. I think even just rationally, when you look around at the structure of the universe, for us to be sitting here right now, having a conversation, just even engaging this way, something always was, something always is, and something always and ever will be. And that beginnings and endings as a concept and construct are a human creation that don't apply to the universe and to creation itself. That the experience of being a human being is an experience in limitation, that if you are a human, you shouldn't be concerning yourself with achieving enlightenment or divine knowledge or transcendence. You'll transcend when you die. You'll figure it all out when you're dead. While you're here, you're to live a human life. to have human experiences. Try and be a good person. Try and follow a moral compass. Or be evil, I guess, because a lot of people choose that path. But the experience is entirely human. If you want enlightenment, just wait until you're not here anymore, and you'll probably get it. The point being is that if you were meant to experience the eternal soul, if you were meant to know it, let me put this another way. If you came here and you knew that you came from somewhere and that you were going back to somewhere else, and you knew the structure of it and you had the memory of it, your experiences here would be framed by that. So when you come into this world, you have no knowledge of where you came from, and you have no knowledge of where you're going. All you know is this. And because all you know is this, when you hurt somebody, and you have a conscience, it leaves an impression on you and your soul. When you do something good, it leaves an impression on your conscience as a human and on your soul. And you go through life and you have all of these individual experiences which leave these lasting impressions. And I know anybody who's lived long enough can think back through their life. I've done it many times where you're reflecting on things, and some memories make you cringe and some memories make you proud. When you die and you go back and you find out that there's more to it than this, those impressions, if you carry the memory of them to the afterlife, are still with you. And you don't lose them. They remain ingrained as part of your journey, whatever you want to call it. That's just another interesting way to think about it. I just think that people who are seeking after enlightenment are wasting your time. Just be a human. Have a human experience. I like the chat comment overlay on the broadcast. It shows you whether ScrewTube is censoring your comments. Good job there. Wish more live streams do that. Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of wanted to do this. It just every time I've tried to do it, it breaks. So I haven't been a big streamer. I haven't been big on doing live casts. So I mean, maybe I will. It's it's not easy to scroll up. It's almost like I need another window. Have you heard of Dolores Canada? I have indeed. You get what you think about the most? Sometimes. I don't know if that's purely true, and I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just I've had a number of fears and worries in my life that I thought about on a daily basis that did not manifest. Maybe it was because I put my energy into avoiding those things. You know? Like I worried about them, but I took action to avoid them because of the worry. But, you know, I came close to disaster a couple times. But I didn't manifest the thing that I was fearing. So I don't know. It seems like maybe there's some gray there. Do you want to be enlightened? Do you want to ascend to a plane of consciousness not available to the basic life forms of Earth? Already happened, baby. We're far more intellectually ascended over rats, for sure. What part of Saskatchewan are you from? The North. I'm from Ontario, but I live in the north of Saskatchewan. And hopefully, I'll find cause to live out the rest of my days here and die here. Trump lied to the world. Iran did the opposite of what he said to the media. Great military move, but lost all credibility. Well, that's an interesting thing, too. So it is publicly acknowledged by the White House that the Trump administration engaged in a deliberate deception in order to cover for the impending Israeli strike, to help keep the Iranian guard down. The White House admitted that. So, like, if the Trump administration and his team are willing to deceive to further another nation's objectives, are they willing to deceive about Jeffrey Epstein, Fort Knox, the national debt, all the other various things that are just going by the wayside? And why is it that people feel the need to just circle the wagons around a politician? Like, I think the best favor that you could do to a politician or a leader that is going off course is to let them know how they're going off course. Like Elon Musk, for instance. Whether you like him or hate him, it doesn't matter. He made public comments about the big, beautiful bill. He criticized it. a public bill. There's nothing wrong with criticizing a public bill, especially that one. Had a pile of pork in it. The AI provisions that were very concerning, increases the national debt. There was, I think he said, a bill can't be big and beautiful at the same time, and he's right. When America has a sovereign debt crisis, crumbling infrastructure everywhere, crumbling affairs everywhere you look, he was perfectly justified in offering his opinion about a bill. And it was actually Trump that went personal first. And so after dragging Musk around to all of these events and putting him in front of the camera whenever he could, giving him the microphone at campaign events, letting Musk, for no money, go to Pennsylvania and campaign hard to deliver Pennsylvania for Trump, all the stuff that Musk did, working for free in Doge, all the things that he did, discovering a dozen computers that just printed money, just to name like one thing, but all of the things that he exposed, only to have all of that work virtually buried and have none of it codified. For all of that, because Musk was critical of a bill, Trump went personal on him. Started calling him names like he does everybody else. Accused him of doing ketamine all the time, to the point where Musk had to go and get a drug test to clear his name. I mean, Musk has done nothing but lose. Tesla stock is down. Trump is now threatening SpaceX and the contracts that SpaceX has with the defense industry. SpaceX is like the coolest thing in terms of space that's been done in decades. Starship is a program that, like, I think it's amazing. I enjoy watching it progress. I enjoy the transparency. I mean, there's cameras pointed at the SpaceX facility 24 hours a day. There's several YouTube channels just dedicated to commentating on the goings-on there and speculating about what they're building and what they're going to do next. And that's in addition to all the various live streams that go on the site. It's so transparent. It's so cool. And it's so advanced. It's I think it's the most advanced aerospace program in the world, and it just happens to be private. And because Musk criticized a bill, and later on, after Trump went personal, pointed out that Trump was on the Epstein list, but none of that had happened yet. Now they're threatening to examine SpaceX and pull contracts and tear the whole thing down. One of the coolest things I really just don't like the way Trump is acting. I don't like the way the administration's going. Big, beautiful kick in the ass. That's a good way to put it. I, for one, love SpaceX and what it's doing, the most advanced aerospace in the entire world, and what a show to watch every landing. And the AI stuff and the Neuralink stuff, I got concerns about that. The thing is, and this is like, and I don't trust Musk either. I'm not going to put him up on a pedestal. I'm going to watch. I'm going to judge people on their actions. But Neuralink, artificial intelligence, drone warfare, all of this stuff, it's coming. It's coming like an avalanche at us. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. So the question is, who's going to control it? Who's going to design it? Who's going to unleash it? There are multiple companies, multiple organizations around the world who are all developing AI concurrently. You can't stop them all. You can't stop the ascendancy of drone warfare. That's one of the other tragedies about Ukraine, is that scarce young men and some women, it's mainly men though, between the ages of 25 and 48, because that's how high the conscription goes up to now, are being rounded up in the street, given very poor training, and they're sent out to the front, and most of them are getting killed by drones. Just a human tragedy. But that's the future. That's what we're coming into. And so Musk might be developing those things as well, but he's not alone. And so far, his actions and his words I find to be more genuine, maybe hopeful. Maybe hopeful is a better word. Than, for instance, trusting OpenAI or Bill Gates to deploy these technologies, or communist China to deploy these technologies and win the race. I don't trust Elon for wanting to put chips in our brains. So the thing with Neuralink is it does have the capacity to restore sight to the blind. It does have capacity to do all kinds of miraculous things to enable people to have more. It's so weird because we're doing the whole euthanasia drive here in Canada at the same time as technologies are being developed that might make the quality of life of blind, deaf quadriplegics better, or at least tolerable. There is a humanity advancing component to all of these technologies. But there's also, on the flip side of that, a dystopian component. The dystopian component is the part that worries me the most. And there's also this overdependence on artificial intelligence. I've touched on this a little bit. And by the way, guys, how's the volume levels? If humanity is just dependent on robots and artificial intelligence to do everything for us, then we become weaker. We stop learning skills. An illustration of this is, and we were talking about this over dinner last night, you go into a restaurant, I don't go to Tim Hortons, but you go to Tim Hortons and you buy a coffee, and the price comes out to $2.25. And so all you got is a $20 bill. So you hand the person, I'm butchering this analogy. I'm totally butchering this analogy. You know the concept of rounding up? So like you hand a person more, so instead of handing a person a $20 bill, you hand them 20 and change so that they can give you back an even number of bills instead of a pocket full of change. The concept is just lost on most people. Basic math skills. I remember years ago, this was years ago, like probably 6-10 years ago now, used to go to the farmer's market. We do all our math in our heads. But a lot of the kids that were coming out of high school, they couldn't add $3.25 and $1.50 together and come up with a successful number. They needed their phones and their calculators. And this is before AI. And so now, the point I'm trying to make is, you have this tendency for people to just ask AI questions to arrive at the ultimate truth. So it's like, Grok, what is this? Grok, tell me the history of this. Tell me the answer of this. And then copy paste the answer as though that is research and in any way intellectually thorough. It's an outsourcing of critical thought. Grok's a tool. AI is a tool, just like a search engine. You need to be in the driver's seat. It needs to be an extension of your mind and your human reason. It can't be a replacement for that. So back to the point. It's not just the mental component. I highlighted a few videos ago a study that came out of MIT which showed that heavy users of AI showed significant decline in cognitive function. That's a big red flag warning sign about our dependence on AI. But it gets worse. Because as we deploy robots and we deploy mechanization and we become a highly sophisticated society and time goes by, we lose the memory of how to do things properly ourselves. And then one day, let's see, it doesn't show my menus. That's good to know. One day the sun is going to kick out a Carrington level flare. Now let's do that right now. The Carrington event was the most intense geomagnetic storm ever recorded, and it occurred in September of 1859. It was triggered by a powerful solar flare that was visible to the naked eye. He noticed the flash, observed by astronomer Richard Carrington, and resulted in auroras visible even at low latitudes and disruptions to telegraph systems, including sparking and fires. We were not electrified in 1859. We had primitive telegraph systems. And this flare was so powerful, it set them on fire. It screwed up a lot of stuff. But we were still dealing with candles, gas lamps, steam engines, all of these what we would call primitive technologies, but that weren't electrically dependent. As we are already so vulnerable to this happening again. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It will happen again. And when it happens, it will fry on probably the planet that is facing the sun, not even facing the sun, the planet that is facing the direction that the coronal mass ejection comes from, will have their entire electrical grids fried completely out of utility, irreplaceably, and civilization will collapse. You might think, well, that's hyperbole. It's not. It's a matter of time because our facilities are not hardened against this kind of event. So the more dependency we have on AI and robotics, and I'm not arguing against those things, it's just humanity has to maintain within itself the seed of doing things ourselves, biologically, with our own hands, with our own knowledge. An interesting thought experiment is actually, it's very clear that there was a civilization that spanned the entire globe prior to the end of the Ice Age, so during the Ice Age. And they built pyramids everywhere. Everywhere they were, different styles of pyramids, but pyramids everywhere, all around the world. To this day, we don't really know why they did it. There's a lot of different educated guesses, but we don't know why. We also find entire cityscapes, cities, underneath 30, 40 meters of water, all along the coastal regions of the world. And the only way those cities, we're talking square miles worth of cityscapes that are underwater, the only way that those cities could get there is either the land subducted, or what we know is that the Ice Age ended and the world's sea levels rose. And we now seem to be centering around this idea that they didn't rise gradually, but they rose over time, but there were two sudden bursts of water. Because on top of the ice sheets, as they melted, there would have been great, big, vast lakes that would have developed, and eventually the ice dam that held the lakes back would have burst. And for instance, here in North America, carved out the Grand Canyon in a matter of a day, maybe 2 days. Instead of it being a localized process, it was a catastrophic event. And our understanding is pretty well centered around this now, even though the world hasn't caught up yet. This is our understanding of how things went. So the catastrophic end of that civilization occurred, and we see the evidence on the ocean floor of this. Civilizations come and go, and ours is no different. The thought experiment is that the peoples that are isolated in the world, so you have your Amazonian rainforest tribes that are isolated, hunter-gatherer societies that are still there. We have these myths that come down to us of enlightened peoples coming from across the sea, in South America and all over the world, this advanced race that taught people civilizing techniques. If there were survivors of such a catastrophe, it would make sense in this thought experiment that you would go and find the hunter-gatherer societies, and that's where you would try to imprint your knowledge and pass it on down, because those people, the primates, the primitive people, are the ones that will survive such a catastrophe. And it seems to me that modern society is barreling towards such a moment, and God knows what will happen. I mean, it's a very fragile society and civilization that we live in to begin with. And I'm a fan of it. I like some of the things. There's a lot of technologies, a lot of cool things that we're doing that I would like to see keep going. But we ignore a lot of big issues, and I think we ignore them at our peril. Climate change is caused by hot air from politicians coming out of both ends. Well, that's about as valid a theory as CO2 driving weather. I think they have about the same validity. Set water level to -100 and see the new land that pops up, 100%. And we know this isn't some kind of conspiracy theory. When the Ice Age was in its fullness, we know the Younger Dryas Flood, exactly, stolen dreams, exactly. The Younger Dryas Flood. This isn't some kind of conspiracy theory. This is geological fact now. We look at the Sphinx and we can see the water erosion on it. It's not wind erosion. In spite of what Hawass, what's his first name? That hack out of Egypt, in spite of what he says, we know these things. We know that the climate was vastly different. I don't understand how we talk about climate change and it's like the climate's been catastrophically changing for 10,000 years. There's nothing new about melting polar ice caps. There's nothing new about melting ice caps. They've been melting for a very long time. We're still in an interglacial warm period, and we should probably be thankful for that because our lives depend on it. Zawi Hawass, that's the guy. Ben Davidson from Space Weather News drops a video every morning worth. Yeah, I've watched Ben Davidson. I think, honestly, I think the guy's a charlatan. Honestly, he talks about some of this stuff, but he misrepresents science to sell a narrative. He's one of those guys that kicks out what the hell does he call it? The galactic sheet, the galactic magnetic sheet, kicked out just far enough that he can keep fundraising off it. These guys come along constantly. They're the Nibiru people. They were the 2012 people. And I'm not, you watch what you do. You do what you want to do. But I think you'll figure it out eventually. That Ben, as Paris says, Ben is a grifter. Yeah, that's my feeling. There's people who want to sell you on fantastic narratives and tell you that they have the answers and the solutions. The vast majority of them don't. They're just selling you something. I think this is something actually really key to navigating the world, is understanding that there's a whole group and segment of society that lies as easily as you and I tell the truth, or as easily as you and I try to tell the truth. They'll lie right to your face, they'll look you in the eyes, and their body language matches up with what they're saying. So they lie convincingly. Mark Carney is actually a perfect example of this. He's a gifted liar. He's gifted at it. He can say one thing and say another thing, and his body language will sing no matter whether he's contradicting himself or not. These people are all around us. They're very common in society. And you have to understand that they gravitate towards fame. They gravitate towards audience. They gravitate towards social media and politics, and positions of power and influence. It's just like the PDFs. PDFs gravitate towards, this isn't saying that all people who are in these groups are PDFs, they gravitate towards daycares, they gravitate towards public schools, they gravitate towards youth groups, because that's where their prey is. And they operate in the open. And you, because you're not a sick person, because you're not twisted, because you have morals and because you have a compass and your brain works differently, you're at a perpetual disadvantage because you're constantly trusting. You have to discipline yourself to engage with the world in a way that looks trusting, but in actual fact, you're always just taking things in and you're always just watching and you're being wary with everything and everybody. It's exhausting work. But there are people who will just lie their face off to you, and they win because the majority of people do not accept or believe that somebody is capable of lying so thoroughly, so often, and so convincingly. And so you have to tease apart the evidence. A great way to study this is there's a channel on YouTube called EWU, and there's other channels like it. If you just actually were here. See, I got to learn how to stream properly. Let's do, what are we going to do? EW YouTube. Explore with us. This is just one channel of many, and all this is interrogations, criminal interrogations. You got to check this stuff out. I mean, it's dark. It might black pill you a little bit, but when you start to understand how the criminal mind works, not just the criminal mind. These are the guys that commit crimes. These are the guys and women that commit crimes. There's people out there that function like this that don't commit crime or don't get caught, and they're all around you. They're grifters on social media. They're grifters in politics. And they lie as easily as you breathe. And you should educate yourself about them. I'm subscribed to EW. Yeah, I mean, I had to stop watching them because I learned enough. I'm just like, okay, I get it. You know, like it's so dark. It's so dark, especially if you're a family man, you love your kids, you love your wife, and you realize, like, man, there's some darkness out there in the human mind. If you want to study a liar, read Matthew 4. Satan is master of this. You can learn how the liars lie. Yeah, but you still, you can learn how they lie, and then you have to discipline yourself. You have to discipline yourself to not accept everything verbatim and to be very careful. And it sucks because it means you have trust issues, but you should have trust issues. But having trust issues is not the same as walling yourself off. You're being careful, you're being protective. And honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You have to learn. We haven't had a single drop frame since that issue before. So I'm going to imagine, tell me something, guys, is the stream smooth? Is it buffering? Is it doing any of the things that people sometimes complain about? Just curious about that. Let me know what the quality's like. I think we're doing pretty good here. Stream is smooth. It's raining in the Battlefords. Jelly beans. Good. I love rain. There's never too much rain in my opinion, but I've always lived high and dry. You couldn't pay me to live on a floodplain. Hi, Frank. I like the shorter hair look for you. If you're running PM, you will have to look the part. I doubt that's ever going to... No one's going to vote for me, man. No one votes for people like me. Like, no one wants it. Nobody wants it. Like, some people do. We're building a community here that might actually want it. But I don't know if you folks have noticed, it's a transient community. People come and go all the time. Because one minute I'm saying what they want me to say, and then the next minute I'm not. When you go into politics, you have to tell people what they want to hear. I am no good at that. Sometimes I want to be. Like, I don't like the conflict. I'm actually an extremely introverted person. I might be able to go to debates politically like I have and succeed. And I might be drawn to argument. The people who are defending Hitler and the various other things that have happened over the last couple of days, it's like all I want to do is come online and argue with them. Like I want to be here. But that's actually not my nature. I don't know if politics is ever going to be for me. I tried it once. It didn't work, largely because I told the truth. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's for me. I don't know if anybody's ever going to vote for that. Tony Fella says, I think we disagree on some things, but I still listen to you. Learning to interact with people with slightly differing opinions was something I learned at the age of 4. Yes, sir. Always telling people what they want to hear entails lying, says Mitch. 100%. The live stream was offline for a minute. Yeah, I mean, my Ethernet stopped working. I don't even know what that was. It was so weird. I had to reboot my router, reboot the computer. I had to update Firefox and do a bunch of stuff, and now it's working perfect. We were dropping frames all over the place, and now everything's smooth. Bog Caddy, I'd vote for you. Well, one day I'll say something you don't like. See if you'll still vote for me. Sandy, I know I've said things you don't like, and you'd still vote for me, so that's good. It's too bad we can't create a majority out of that. So what else we got? Let's see here. Let's try and go through something. That's the golden goat. That's weird on top of a black rock. That's something. What was this one? Oh, this is Turbo Servo. For any Saskabushers in the chat, we have a Native American versus an East Indian in Prince Albert. Nice fight in a parking lot. The melting pot firing for effect. You're just going to see more of this. You're just going to see more of this. Hey, have fun, eh? Love you. This is why I live in the middle of nowhere. Good God. Let's see what else we got. We're just going to close that. We don't need to look at that again. This was an interesting one. Syria's Druze avoided the worst of 14-year civil war and want little to do with the rulers. This is CBC, folks. This is CBC. And where is it? Got to find it. They talk about, it's downplayed. There have been bouts of extreme violence, particularly towards the country's minorities. This is after the Assad regime fell, because under Assad, you could be a Christian in Syria. You could have churches. You could thrive. A pro-Assad uprising on the Syrian coast in March was followed by revenge killings against the Alawite community, while just 2 weeks ago an ISIS bombing against a church in Damascus killed dozens of Christians. For CBC to mention dozens of Christians dying, it must be pretty bad, because we had a crisis of church burnings all across Canada, and they didn't mention that at all. It's still something that it would be everybody denies had a pattern, totally had a pattern, was unleashed, I would say, by the government and its policies. Because there's nothing more anti-Christian than the Canadian government in Canada. I would say even Hamas probably isn't as anti-Christian as the Canadian government. But it's not dozens of Christians. Thousands of people have been killed by Jelani and the new Syrian regime, which there's another thing, guys. First term, Donald Trump, he comes in and he's all proud because he's killed off ISIS in record time. And remember, that was a huge talking point. And now, in Syria, we have ISIS in charge through Jelani. They polished him up because at first he didn't wear a suit, but they polished him up. They're like, dude, you got to put a suit on. If we're going to sell this to the world, you got to wear a suit. So they cleaned him up, and they gave him a nation. And honestly, I think he's just a stopgap. I think he's filler between Turkey and Israel, which is a conflict that has been brewing and simmering for years. For those of you who don't know, Turkey and Israel don't get along. And it's very inconvenient for the West because Turkey is a member of NATO. So things can get complicated fairly quickly. I think Jelani's a useful tool. I think the powers that be that are overseeing Syria are more than happy to watch him slaughtering religious and ethnic minorities all over Syria. And then I think, at some future date to be determined, he'll be sacrificed and his government will be sacrificed. And Syria will likely be carved up by the emerging Middle Eastern power, the new Middle East as it's called. But I just wanted to note that CBC actually spoke about Christians being killed. They won't talk about it in Nigeria. They won't talk about it in many other places in the world. They won't talk about the slaughter ongoing in South Africa. But they gave it a mention here. So I guess credit where credit is due. Crazy. Al Jelani sounds like a kind of cold ice cream kind of treat. I guess. I'm just about that peanut butter and chocolate. There is a doctrine of destruction regarding Christian targeting. Well, that's another one. That's another one. So you couldn't go on stage at a concert and burn the Star of David. You couldn't go on stage at a concert and burn an effigy of Muhammad. But I was watching a clip of Slayer the other day, and they had, I think it was their reunion because Slayer, it's a metal band and they've gotten back together. And the opening part of their act, it starts with 3 white crosses and they just gradually turn upside down before they begin their set. And then there's whole genres of music that are just dedicated to hating Christians. No other religion on the face of the planet faces that kind of open persecution, open mockery. The elites of the world mock it. The Olympics with the whole Last Supper thing. See, I got to get better at streaming. You don't do this to Judaism. You don't do this to Buddhism. You don't do this to Hinduism. You don't do this to Islam. You do it to Christianity. Why? I think I know the answer. I really do. I think Roman universalism has blinded us to a lot of what Jesus was bringing to the table. And I don't know if I'm ready to speak on it. But there's only one faith in the world, and I think that speaks. There's only one faith in the world where you can do this without outrage. You can demonize Christianity all day, every single day. You can do the most vile, horrible things. You can show up at protests with a transgender Jesus and stab him to death in effigy. No one's going to say a thing. But you can't do it with anybody else. It tells you who's running the world. It gives you an indication of maybe where your attention should go if you're interested in spiritual matters. I found the Olympic ceremony deeply offensive, saying that unironically it was a disgusting, awful display. It was. There was a little kid, well, right there, actually. I don't know if you can see my, yeah, you can. But the chat's blocking it. But this is a little kid. And I believe it's this dude that's standing behind him. His nutsack was hanging out. This is that normalization of the PDFs. It's happening right before our eyes, and they're doing it while they're mocking Christ. They're slapping us in the face with this. The one truth faith is the one that gets attacked. That is one big piece of evidence for why, if you want to channel your spiritual energies into something that is otherworldly, Christian history and Christian heritage should take the lion's share of your attention. You remember, and again, one of the miraculous things is how much wisdom is actually still found in the canon, the New Testament, considering all the hands that it's gone through, and a lot of the hands that it's passed through were anti-Christian, were anti-Christ. It's interesting how condemnation for the state of modern church affairs and dogma is found in the very book that they preach from. A lot of these false idols, for instance, like the think of some of the grifting charlatan evangelicals down south. There's a lot of them. They're condemned by their own book. I'll actually show you. Let me, since we're here, we're going to go to I think it's Matthew 6. Be careful not to display your righteousness merely to be seen by people. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father in heaven. Thus, whenever you do charitable giving, do not blow a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on streets, so that people will praise them. I tell you the truth, they have the reward. They have the reward in this life. But when you do your giving, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your gift will be in secret, and your Father, the Abba Father, who sees in secret, will reward you. Whenever you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, because they love to pray while standing in synagogues and on street corners, so that people will see them. Truly I say to you, they have the reward. But whenever you pray, go into your inner room, either in here or a physical location. Close the door. Pray to your Father in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. When you pray, do not babble repetitiously like the Gentiles, because they think that by their many words they will be heard. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him, so pray this way. And then the Lord's Prayer, which I've studied immensely, and I think there's so many secrets to what Christ had in mind that you can tease out of the Lord's Prayer itself, to do with the distinct relationship, the distinct divide between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Let's put it that way. But this verse is a lot of the reason too why I don't drift into this subject very often. The instructions are very clear. It's in here. It's personal. It's a private relationship. And there's a lot of people who bear the cross who aren't Christians, some of the more prominent people in the community. And at the same time, like we just talked about, you can defecate all over Christianity and nobody's going to say a word about it. Oh my God, I just got a sinking feeling Trump might have been owned by BlackRock. I went for a smoke break just thinking about that goat. There's other symbolism there too, man. I am the Yoda, which raises some doubt. When you pray to God, you are having a personal conversation with the Lord. It's private. It's secret between you and the Lord. It sure is. And the U.S. boycott remains strong. Okay, we're not going to get into that. It sure is. It sure is personal. And it's my observation through years of my own personal worship, which has been very private. I've never been a church-going person. I have started going to church a little bit more recently. I found a community church where there's not a lot of dogma. There's just a lot of discussion about. There's a lot of fellowship. I think church is very good for fellowship, but I'm not sure church is often that good for finding spiritual wisdom. I think you find that on your own. But I've had a very long-term personal relationship. And I think it's guided by that section, among other things. Baphomet symbolism in that goat statue. Yeah. The one true God does not fear mockery or criticism. You love your worship, and that's all that matters to him. There's actually references in the New Testament to that very concept. The U.S. boycott remains strong. Why many Canadians are digging in their heels. Trump's ongoing trade war is helping fuel a prolonged boycott of U.S. goods and travel. Meanwhile, the elbows up crowd that they elected are bowing down, or getting ready to bow down. Carney goes down there and praises him, invites him up here, comes to Alberta, praises him. Because if we don't do a deal, Canada is going to suffer for it. And maybe we will. I mean, I don't think Carney cares whether we suffer or not. $92 billion deficit this year. No budget, spending all that money without any parliamentary oversight whatsoever. There's a whole chunk of Canadian society that is absolutely vacuous. They're about signaling virtue. They're about empty gestures. They're not about substance. And this is the madness that we drive our heads against all the time. What do we got here? Turkey becomes first country to block Croc after AI bot insults Erdogan. I'm telling you, Turkey is the Trojan horse in NATO. They play all sides. Kind of appropriate considering their place on the world map. They've come very close to a shooting war with Israel a couple times. They're assertive. They do business with Russia. They opened the floodgates to migration and used it as a weapon against Europe. So when they were having a dispute with Greece, they said, well, if you don't give us what we want, we're just going to flood you out with migrants. We'll open the door and we'll let them come right through Turkey and walk right into Europe. And we're happy to do it. They should have been kicked out of NATO a long time ago. It's crazy to me. I understand it in the context of the Cold War, how they ended up there, but I do not understand it in the modern context why Turkey is still a part of NATO. Other than the fact that kicking them out or actually telling the truth about Turkey would be very inconvenient and would lead to, instead of kicking the ball down the road, we'd have to deal with the consequences of the past choices today. And nobody chooses short-term pain for long-term gain in politics. Avoiding short-term pain is all politicians do. That's why nobody ever wants to fix deficits or actually have conversations about how to, like here in Canada, how the Federation doesn't serve the people, how we don't have property rights and citizen rights, and how we need to upgrade the entire structure, and how we should have an elected Senate and maybe an elected Governor General. Maybe we should dispense with the monarchy altogether. All of these conversations, which would make your life and my life better on an ongoing and daily basis, but would cause some short-term pain. No one wants to do it. No one wants to make things better. They just want to pretend that everything's hunky-dory. Even Pierre Poilievre comes out and says, we are so proud of the Westminster system. It's just the most wonderful thing in the world, even though it sucks. And it's served to defeat conservative voices in this country over and over again. It's served to subject and subjugate the provinces. It's allowed the concentration of power over the purse, over regulation, to the signature of the Governor General alone. So some have said to me as a form of pushback, they're just like, the government, which is not Parliament, the government is the Prime Minister and his cabinet and the Governor General and the King, not Parliament, not the people you elect. Some people have said to me, the government, accepting the premise of that argument, cannot pass new laws. Only Parliament can pass or repeal a law. And so Parliament, in their mind, ultimately has the power. It's not true. Carney's proven that with his fake executive orders, where he can just decide to suspend a law. And we'll get to Parliament later. We'll make it formal and official later on down the road. That they can spend money with reckless abandon without any parliamentary oversight. This system sucks so bad. And the longer I think about it, and the more I ponder it, the more convinced I am that it is terrible, and we should be seeking to dispense with it by all means. And if the majority opinion in Ontario and Quebec and other places in this country is that it's great and hunky-dory and they want to keep heading down the road towards perdition, that Doug Ford is a great leader, outstanding. You can keep him. But I really think Premier Smith and Premier Moe should be considering their options and doing something very different. And doing it loud, because maybe if we do it loud enough, maybe we can actually force some change into this federation that makes lives better for people. Because it sucks, man. Canada's terrible. It is so backwards. It's so backwards. It doesn't even have an excuse for calling itself a modern government because it is so antiquated. I just discovered that churches in Canada own nothing because they are not-for-profit organizations. The not-for-profit owns, well, you see, that's dicey. Because you don't really own anything in Canada. You possess title to it. And literally, Mark Carney can come along and go to the Governor General and he can say, I am banning this form of property. So far, it's only really applied to firearms and plastic straws and things of that nature, even though that was an act. The Prime Minister can ban any personal property that you think you own, can be banned tomorrow. 1 minute, you're perfectly legal, and the next minute, you're in possession of contraband. That's the power of the Prime Minister and the Governor General in Canada. So nobody really owns anything. I did a video recently about the Indian Act and how the reserves themselves, not only do the people on the reserves never get title and possession of the houses that they live in, they rent from the band, and that's all they can ever hope for. They never can participate in a free market. If they want those tax breaks, if they want to not pay income tax and sales taxes, they have to stay on the reserve. If they work off reserve, they're taxed like everybody else. There's no work on the reserve. Often the only work is with the band, which is funded by the taxpayer through the federal government. But the band itself doesn't even own the land. The Crown does. Every single reserve sits on Crown land, which the band virtually manages on behalf of the Crown. Canada sucks for everybody. It just sucks for everybody. Wayne Lusto, have a great day, Frank. I enjoy your talks. I'm off to the doctor. Good luck, Wayne. Hope you get what you need. God bless you for even being able to see a doctor. Hey, now, that better not be traditional talk. You don't think women should make sandwiches, do you? Better watch the RCMP. Yeah, traditional values are bad. I haven't even got to that yet. I wanted to do a video about that specific thing, but I mean, and whose traditional values? I mean, obviously we know who they're talking about, But like the Sikh community, Hindu community, the Arab community, all have variations on the theme. So you have man, woman, married, having children. I went to a wedding years ago, where the son of, I believe they were Hindu. He was a Christian, but his parents were Hindu, married a white girl. And so, of course, I was related to the white girl. And there I was in this big wedding hall, sitting on, and there was segregation, right? The groom's family sat on one side, the bride's family sat on the other side. And so on the groom's side, there was ethnic cohesion. He was the anomaly by marrying outside of his ethnic grouping. They were all paired off, and there were kids running around everywhere. Reminded me of weddings I went to when I was a kid in the 1980s. Kids everywhere. Family cohesion everywhere. On the bride's side, no children, very few. Divorces, wreckage, social engineering baggage. And I remember I was standing at the banquet. I wasn't even getting food. I was literally standing there all by myself. I'm kind of weird at social functions because I'm off in my own world. I'm always thinking about my own things, so I don't know. I'm probably no fun at parties. Although people say I am. They say I have a good sense of humor. At any rate, I'm standing there with my back to the buffet, and I'm looking down the center where the aisle is, where they walked up, and I'm seeing the divide. And I'm like, man, we are beat. We're just beat. So they have, that's the point I'm trying to make, they have traditional values, and you can see it. But those are not the traditional values that the RCMP is concerned about. Is there such a thing as property ownership in Canada? No, you don't have any property rights in Canada. All of your property can be seized at the stroke of a pen. Believe it. The RCMP needs to go. A federal police force in general is a bad idea almost everywhere it's deployed. It always ends up in the situation where, and then the federal police force is responsible for protecting all your politicians. There's very little private security, armed private security in Canada, especially for politicians. So you get elected to public office, and there's this bureaucracy that is responsible for protecting your life. And maybe they let you know it. Good afternoon, Gwen H. Glad to see you come in. Good to see everybody here. Thanks for everybody for being here, too. And I know people are going to come and go, and that's just kind of the way it is, but the only thing we need the federal government for is military and international issues. If only they stayed in those lanes, maybe we would be having a better conversation. I've lost so much of the chat. Polyev is weak. Daniel Smith wants to be the next crime minister. They're all dedicated federalists. And that's the problem. All the Western premiers have always been dedicated federalists. They don't want to have a conversation outside of the Federation, which I think is a mistake because the people who have advantaged themselves the most out of Canada are the Quebecois. How do they do it? Constantly threatening to leave and clinging vociferously to their provincial rights. We should be doing the same. They use the notwithstanding clause a dozen times. Nobody bats an eyelash, but Ford uses it to end a strike. And it was national scandal. It's not right. Jelly Bean says you don't allow super chats. I'm not a YouTube partner. I don't really want to be. If you want to support what I do, you go to my website. There's options there. There's a lot of tremendous pressure, well-minded and well-thought-out pressure for me to monetize. To be a YouTube partner, then you got to start self-censoring. You have to be careful what you say. You have to be careful what you do. You lose a degree of freedom. It's not like I'm not careful now using terms like PDF, stuff like that. I'm still careful. But the eye of Sauron is more upon you. And then Google takes 30% of your donation and charge GST on top of it. So the way that we're doing things here is I provide everything up front, and there's no special access to anybody. It's all equal. If you get lost in the chat, you get lost in the chat with 100 other people. Because there's no special access, there's no special videos, there's no paywalls, I don't have to charge you GST. The second I create a members exclusive club, or I go to Patreon, or I monetize, you start paying GST. Now the cool thing is, because this is a business, like I will file taxes for this. I did last year, actually. There wasn't much there to file, but I file taxes. I do everything by the book. This is a business. It'll have write-offs that it will qualify for as I incur expenses if I have enough income to incur expenses. I can still get a rebate on the GST I spend to buy things for the business, but I don't have to charge you GST as long as I'm providing everything for free up front. You see? So there's a number of reasons why I haven't monetized on YouTube. And it hurts. It's not the money, it's the reach. YouTube is not inclined to show people what you're doing when they're not making money off you. So that's why I do things the way I do. If you want to support it, you go to frankvaughn.ca. Wait a minute. Do I have a thingy? Let's see. Maybe I should be doing this a little bit more professionally. Let's see if I can find it. You go to frankvaughn.ca, and that's where you can support me. Many people do, and I appreciate it because as I develop, I want to build a set. My original vision for live streams is me sitting in a chair with all of my books gathered together and like actually being a usable space and not a set, like a space that I actually use and having conversations there. And I've been kind of slowly putting that whole concept together. I don't know, like, what do you guys think of streaming? Like, I'm kind of new to this. I don't know if this is, I don't know how this compares to other streamers. Like, streaming's so different because there's going to be dead space. You're going to be getting up to, getting up to go to the bathroom sometimes. Like, some guys eat on stream. It goes on for hours and hours and hours. So I'm always in favor of tight videos that people can then watch because a lot of stuff will get missed in the stream. And if you don't have an editor taking out the good stuff and putting it together and making, I guess I could do that. I could do a live stream and then I could edit my own stuff and make a more tailored video to put out. But there's a lot of my time that's consumed by just research. Like, that's most of my time doing this is research. So I might make a half-hour video. But aside from spending time with my family, the rest of my time is consumed by just reading things and trying to understand things. So, like, there's only so much time I have, and I'm completely on my own. There's other than the support of my wife, who encourages me to do this and is more than happy to live like a pleb. I shouldn't say that. We're not living like plebs. It's just we live as cheap as we possibly can to do the things that we're doing. And she's more than happy to drive a used car. She's more than happy to shop at thrift stores and get hand-me-downs for the kids and go on Marketplace to find. My kids have all the toys, but we've spent almost no money on those toys because we find deals. Like, we hunt. And she does that so that I can do this. She focuses on teaching them, doing the homeschooling side, so that there's a bit of separation between what I do and what she does. She's university educated. She's very well equipped to spearhead that side of the family. And she's my number one fan. She very much believes in what I'm trying to do. And she accepts that I do it very differently. Like, I'm not selling ads. I'm not doing sponsorships. If I start plugging something like Epoch Times, I think everybody should read the Epoch Times. They're worth a subscription. I love that newspaper. Nobody's paying me to say that. I could tell you about Drake's beef jerky. I don't know if it's sold in Alberta, but I know it's sold here. Man, that is the best beef jerky I've ever had in my life. There's absolutely no consistency between one bag and the next bag. You never know what you're going to get, but they're all good. They're all variations on good. Sometimes it's chewier, sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's more flavorful, sometimes it's less flavorful, but it's the best jerky I've ever had in my life. If they contacted me today and they said, hey, man, we want to sponsor you, I'd say, no, I'm just going to plug your product for free. I want to keep it this way. I want to keep it this way. I'm not judging anybody for doing it a different way. They're probably smarter than I am. But as long as I can do it, I want to keep it this way. So anyway, there's the website. If you want to support it, you go there. You do it that way. I really hate how I can't go back through the chat. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a different window, and I am going to open up the stream, stop it, and then I can actually go through the chat. Faye Knox, I'm subscribed to the Epoch Times. Good. I think they're worth it. I really think they're worth it. You could do the research on stream. We're kind of doing that now, right, man? Like AWR Canada, we're kind of doing that now. Like I've watched a lot of different streamers, and I can see how like I could make scenes, I can make transitions, I could prep the video beforehand. I've always looked at streams as a way to interact with the audience more than do a presentation. If I want to do a presentation, I'll pre-record it and I'll release it, and then I'll chat with you guys in the comment section. But sometimes I want to do this where I'm talking to you guys and talking to the community, and I want to keep this going, and I don't want to present barriers to entry. Like I'm not going to be able to talk to everybody, but I can certainly talk to some of you and just keep it equal access. But like if I was actually to start doing a steady streaming component, I mean, would it even work? Would it work? Would the channel still grow? Like, I don't know. How do people tune in? I don't know anything about how it feels to be on the streaming side. I just know what it's like as a viewer. Like, there's people who stream 8 hours a day, man. Asmongold streams constantly. But I don't know if that's a good medium for me. I don't know if it's what people want, right? As much as I'm not about giving people what they want, structurally I don't mind tailoring things to be more accessible for people. Frugality, Silver Stacker says, yep, I'm about as frugal as I can possibly get. I can't save money in my house anymore. I mean, short of just not eating for the next 6 months, and then I've got to start eating again. Like I couldn't possibly live cheaper. I'd have to sell my house and move into an apartment somewhere, and then maybe I could be cheaper. And I'm not going to do that. The kids have got space to run around. I'm going to keep that for as long as I can. Western Standard is good too. Yep. I don't mind the Western Standard. I mean, I could split hairs over how friendly they are when it comes to Bernier, but I was reading an article the other day about his support of a Western independence vote, and I thought, it was actually pretty well-rounded. My initial reaction to it was a little bit harsher, and then when I started reading it, I'm like, no, Western Standard did a pretty good job. Thanks for being honest. This is from Len Guindon. Thanks for being honest. Most of us live like you, Frank, just subbed. Thanks for coming in. Pay taxes but get dividends. So yeah, there is an interesting conversation to be had about corporate structure for a business, but I don't have the sustain for that. I don't need to worry about that. Right now it's just organized as the sole proprietorship. So, over and above a certain amount, like you're going to be generating expenses. Maybe someday we'll do the whole corporate thing. Clyde can teach you. Yeah, Clyde and I've had business conversations before. We talk offline a bit. And people, man, I take a lot of, I'm just going to say it, I take a lot of shit for going on his stream, man. People hate him. There's a few people that just hate that guy, and I don't get it. He's always been so nice to me. He's more than helpful on the tech end. He's more than happy to talk about business. He's got a beautiful family. I think he's genuine. Like, I think he's just a genuine guy. I like him. Sue me. I like him. I'm going to keep on liking him, too. Have you considered Rumble at all? Yes. Yes, I have considered Rumble. I have to, I don't know. I've considered it, yeah. I've considered it. If it's not tiresome for you, Frank, then you can do it. But yeah, got to know how to keep it going. It's not so much like I'd be doing this anyway. The thing that I think it's tiresome is sometimes all the information gets really heavy. And then like you feel the more you learn and the more disassociated I am from advertising and from social cycles and from pop culture and media, and I've been removed from that stuff for a couple decades now, you know? And so you kind of feel like you're way out here on your own. And whatever you know with some certainty is almost useless because you're not on the same level anymore. And I'm not saying like I'm above, I'm saying I'm not on the same level. It's like I don't have the same level of understanding as somebody who's working not even just 9 to 5, somebody who's working 10, 12 hours a day. They got break time on their phone to scroll through their Google News feed. Maybe they watch 1 or 2 videos here and there, but that's all they get. You know what I mean? That's all they get. How do you distill a body of knowledge down into a couple minutes when you have a conversation with them? You know, so you just end up feeling it gets kind of heavy, you know. There's definitely a feeling of being alone that comes with it. I talk to my wife about that often enough. Like there's not too many people in my life that stay. They come and they go. And mostly it comes down to opinions that I've expressed, thoughts that I've expressed. Everybody that comes in the door and is actually friendly, it's sad to say, but I'm almost getting to a point where it's like I'm just waiting for the moment when they leave because I feel like it's going to happen one time or another. Not that I seek it, it's just, it can be heavy. Kenzie Kraken says, yep, I can't be any cheaper either. Yeah, I get that. There's just only so much you can save. And then you're out of room to cut down anymore. Why does Clyde wear a hat all the time? I don't know. He wears a hat. Maybe I don't know. Ask him. I could guess, but ask him. Thank you very much for the insight you provide on the many issues that concern me and my grandchildren. Yeah, Lewis. Yeah, we do what we can. Rumble has no reach. Maybe that's a problem too. Shelley Ford, I'm sure you will miss this. Well, let me dispel your certainty. You really need to run for office again and again and again. We need people like you at the helm that can make the changes happen. Please consider. I don't know. Maybe. You know, I'm not going to rule it out. I don't know at what level. I don't think there's a party at the federal level that will ever have me. Maybe at the provincial level, I don't know. The road is long and it has many a winding turn, so I can't say no to everything. But I still come up against the fact that I just don't think people would ever vote for me, that they would elect me. Military schools, elderly and people power, as we did in the 70s, plastic everywhere. We had cleanup day. We still, they still do that stuff here in Saskatchewan. There's such a strong sense of community. And interpersonally, that's another thing about being here that I just love. When we go to the grocery store and we take the family, take the big trip into town, everybody's talking to you. Everybody's interacting with you. Everybody's nodding. Everybody's having conversations. People aren't afraid to talk to your kids. It's so charming. If I go to the gun shop, you could be stuck in an aisle for 2 hours just talking to random people you don't even know. You go and you sit down in a restaurant Not that we go to restaurants very often, but the times that we have, you go to a restaurant, you can end up in a conversation with somebody for 10 or 15 minutes that you'll maybe never see again. That personal touch, it's still here. And back east where I was in small town Ontario, and it was disappearing. Everybody's walled up. COVID broke a lot of minds and separated everybody, and everybody's got their head down looking at the pavement. Nobody's smiling anymore. You know, it's still alive and well here in the community aspect of it. I mean, community is everything here, man. You know, people still meet face to face. They get together for cleanup days. Like, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's not to say that doesn't still exist in Ontario, because I know it does. I knew some really cool people when I was back there. There was this guy, John. When I went to the farmers markets on Saturdays, I'd be setting up my stall, because I got there at like 5 in the morning, sometimes a little earlier. I'd be setting up the stall, getting ready to do my business, and there'd be John with his, you know, those tongs, those reacher things where you for picking up trash. He'd have that, and he'd have his bag, and he'd be walking the entire canal in Campbellford, just picking up other people's trash just to make it look beautiful. He did it every day. There was a neighborhood alcoholic, really bad, like really, really bad situation. I mean, he's gone now. Like, he's dead, but really bad situation. He'd be wandering around the streets at 6 in the morning, just drunk off his rocker and his underwear sometimes. John took him under his wing and took him along, even though he was drunk off his gourd, took him along picking up garbage, and eventually helped sober him up a little bit and put a little structure in his life. There's guys like John all over the place in Ontario, and God bless them all. But it's just that much stronger here in Saskatchewan. Keith Vaughn says, "You're doing a fantastic job, brother. Don't ever stop being the FPV I've always known." Keith Vaughn, for those of you who don't know, that's my brother. He's my little big brother because he's older, but he's shorter. And he's an awesome human being. There's no way around that. He's an awesome human being. Make a monthly review for people, Frank. Good for you, too. Yeah, we could do something like that. Chat just skipped again. Wait till the currency hyperinflates? I mean, do we got to wait for that? I think it's already happening. I feel like my parents when I'm just like, I remember when something cost this or something cost that. Like, I can't believe the grocery bill. I look at the receipt and I'm like, there's nowhere else to go. Like, you go to town and like, it's hard to walk into a store and not drop $100 or $200 just picking up a couple things. When you actually do a shop for a family of 4, it's a lot more than that. I'm a little bit out of touch with what things cost. Faynox says, I like Clyde. Yeah, I mean, on a human level, like this is the thing. You may not agree with Clyde. I don't know on what level you're going to disagree with him. For that matter, you might disagree with Wyatt Claypool or Moose on the Loose or Northern Perspective or any of these other people. But in terms of the people that I've built personal relationships with, which include Clyde, which include Wyatt Claypool, which include Daniel Boardman, we can disagree. I don't know if I've ran up against anything with Clyde I really disagree with yet, but I don't think it matters. I've definitely run into disagreement with Claypool. I've definitely ran into disagreement with Boardman at times. We've gone back and forth. Boardman and I think 2 or 3 days ago, we went back and forth over Ukraine on X. I think we went back and forth 3 or 4 times. He made his point, I made my point, and then we stopped. We just got to a certain point with it where we stopped. And over the next couple of days, he's interacting with some of my tweets. Like, he's still reading my stuff because we can disagree, right? Some people, you can disagree with, and at the end of the day, still like. And CJR says, same reason Tim Pool wears a beanie. He's bald. Maybe, maybe not. My dad was bald. I didn't get that gene. Frank can make his own party and do better than the PPC in growth, albeit still somewhat splitting the vote to Lib-Lite CPC. I don't know about that. I appreciate the endorsement, but I don't know. I won't get any of the PPC vote. That I think that's largely inaccessible to me because those people, they don't like what I have to say when I tell the truth about them. So I'm never going to win them. That's not entirely true. Now when I think about it, it's going through my mind. There's a bunch of different names that over the years, because I left in early 2020, because I could see, I was done with the election in 19. I left. I could see that he wasn't going to give a constitution, that he wasn't going to open things up, that parachuted candidates that didn't belong there, and there was all these issues. And there were some people who had very harsh things to say to me. And all I would say to them is the same thing I say to people now is, you'll figure it out one day. And when you do, come find me. And I won't even say I told you so. All is done, and we'll just move on. We'll move on together. And there's been a number of people over the course of the last few years where that exact scenario's happened. They reach out to me privately, and they're just like, dude, I'm so sorry. And all I say to them is, there's nothing to be sorry for. Let's just forget about it. Glad you're here now. I don't know about my political prospects. I appreciate the endorsements. I just visited Paris, Ontario, a one-horse kind of town out west in Ontario. Such a different low-gear feel compared to Toronto and its surrounding areas. Hasn't quite been overrun there yet. Kitchener-Waterloo, on the other hand, I was just having a really long chat last night, actually, with an individual who lives there, and they were just saying that it's East India too. It's like Brampton. It's totally overrun with new immigration. It was actually a really enlightening conversation because they have a lot of acquaintances and friends that are teachers. And talking about the expectation, I'm not a fan of the teachers union. I've said a lot of bad things. But let's go to the other side of the coin for a minute. Let's talk about the individual teacher for a minute, what the expectation is in an Ontario school. I don't know what it's like in Saskatchewan, but I do have some knowledge about what it's like in Ontario, enhanced by this conversation that I had last night. So there was this teacher, who's a friend of this person's, who didn't want to retire. They wanted to go. They were reaching retirement age, but they loved teaching so much they were just going to keep going. And so at some point, after having the conversation where the person confirmed that they wanted to keep teaching, they had another chance encounter where they talked, and the person I was talking to was surprised that this teacher had retired. So she said, "Why did you retire?" I think everybody knows that they've taken the, what are we supposed to say these days? The mentally challenged, not just behaviorally, but actually disadvantaged, disabled. They've taken them, whereas in the 1990s, they would have their own special classes, their own special rooms. There would be the general population. There would be your advanced classes. There would be your normal classes. And then there would be your special education classes. And they've mixed them all together now because everybody's got to be equal. Everybody's got to be the same. So in this retired teacher, she found out, first off, she was already upset with the fact that a lot of the kids that are getting put in the classroom can't speak any English, can't speak a word of English. And the expectation is that she will teach them math successfully without any common language. So that was the first straw. The straw that broke the camel's back and sent her into retirement was the fact that she found out the next year she was going to have 4 special needs kids in the class that were like ultra special needs. They couldn't actually physically learn the content. But the parents felt that if they paid taxes, those kids had a right to be in school too, i.e. they were looking for babysitters. They were looking for a break. That's what I think. And so she quit. She just quit. Between the kids that can't speak English, that she's expected to teach successfully, and the special needs kids that she's expected to give all her time to while also servicing the other 25 kids in the class, and in addition, the expectation that you can't fail a kid anymore, that even though they're like, we were talking about test scores because it wasn't just the one teacher. This person knows a bunch of different teachers, and we're talking about test scores. And the median grade for graduates is going up and yet their capacity to actually do work, basic work, spelling, diction, math, is going down. And the reason the median score is going up is because you can't fail anybody anymore. You can't hold anybody back. So, like, that's education in Ontario. And there was example after example after example of that exact scenario. And this conversation is not the first time I've encountered this. It's sending teachers into retirement because it doesn't make any sense. And everybody's suffering for this inclusivity, this idea that everybody has to be treated exactly the same. How did we even get on that? I don't even know what comment I read that got me on that tangent. Sorry I was late. I did come in earlier, but your stream was offline. Yeah, we had tech issues earlier, but I mean, so far we haven't dropped a single frame, and we've been going for 2 hours now. This is awesome. See, I had serious doubts, too, about Starlink being able to do this. And apparently it's doing very well. Oh, it was the Paris, Ontario thing. Yeah. I know people in Paris, Ontario. It's a different town. Right now, till SpaceX lassos space debris with precious needed for all ESP batteries. Why? But Georgie, draw that. I have no idea what's going on. You're going to have to speak English. Boko says, hey, Keith Vaughn. Yeah. Move to Alberta, Frank. LOL. I just moved to Saskatchewan, man. Now you want me to uproot and move to Alberta? You know, Saskatchewan has much more favorable rules for homeschoolers, too. If you want to homeschool, this is the place to be. There's a lot of advantages to being in Saskatchewan. I know Alberta's cool and everything. But Saskatchewan's pretty awesome, too. Sadly, it can get much worse. Think Venezuela. You're right, Silver Stacker, about inflation. It can get much worse. And the way things are going will get much worse. Family of 4 on Vancouver Island costing us close to $1,200 a month for food. So, yeah, you go to the butcher. I got a full cow coming in December that I'm going to have to pay for. It's grass-fed, organic, beautiful beef. It's going to cost around $8.59 a pound. It's going to fill probably 2 freezers. I still have, I don't know, I went crazy because I bought a half last year, and then I was just like, it's not enough. It's a full, and I've got so much of that beef left I still have to work through. But then again, I've got months. You get it sometime in December, January is when that cow's going to come. Do you know how much money that saves us? It costs a fraction of hydro or electricity to keep the freezers going. I did the math on it one time, and it keeps things so much cheaper in terms of high quality protein, 4-legged protein. And we don't buy a lot of the treats, a lot of the snacks and stuff, but like we do buy things like kefir, strawberry flavored kefir. The kids love it. Really good for them, but it's like $9 a liter. Stuff ain't cheap, like even juices and some pretty standard stuff for kids. It's not cheap. But the buying a half cow or a cow is like it's the way to go. It really is the way to go. You want to save money, you got to get yourself a freezer. But then, I say that. It's easy for me to say because I live in a place in the country that's cheaper to live. So housing costs here are much better. Taxes tend to be lower. Property taxes tend to be lower. Rents are much lower. You can get a 2-bedroom apartment in pretty much all of northern Saskatchewan. You can get a 2-bedroom apartment for $850 a month. I tell people all the time, if you've got the values, you got the right mindset, you're going to leave that Ontario, BC drama behind you and not bring it with you. Come to Saskatchewan. There's work. You can still afford to live. But if you're living in Vancouver, you're living in Toronto, you're living in Oshawa, you're living in the GTA, you're living in these urban centers, you're paying $3,000 a month to live in a coffin. You're basically in a Kleenex box. 2-bedroom apartment with your family. You don't have room for the freezer to go and get yourself a freezer full of meat. And if, I don't, even with the real estate market in free fall in Ontario, which it is, where's that graph actually? I keep forgetting I can just bring things up. This is it. If we start doing streaming, I'm going to have to get better at my stat game. So this is newly completed dwellings as a share of homes needed to support population growth. And it shows the population growth from 2021 to 2024 in people. So let's just look at Vancouver. 337,000 people came to Vancouver. They built 67,000 homes. That's 199 new dwellings per 1,000 people. That's one of the better rates. I mean, the housing shortage continues. There's 250,000 people showing up in Ontario every single year. With all of that pressure, and Ontario is only building 5,500 homes a year. 5,500 homes a year with 250,000 people showing up in the province every single year. And alongside of that, we just had this property boom driven by money laundering, driven by immigration, driven by all the things I've covered on this channel. There's a lot of reasons why the property boom happened. Printing money. Real estate tends to keep up with the money supply in terms of value. Thank God it did, because that's what got me out of Ontario in the first place. If it wasn't for that property boom in 2022, I wouldn't be here now. My kids wouldn't have a better place to live. I wouldn't be in a better environment with a lot better, like with really solid homeschooling community. In light of all of those factors that put a positive thrust on home prices, prices in Ontario are going down and people can't sell their homes. I was looking at a list the other day. I think I deleted it, but I was looking at a list. I had a bunch of screenshots. I was going to put it in a video, and then I just decided not to. That's a lot of what happens too. I build segments out, and then I'm like, I'll just do it different. But it was looking at home sales. Actually, we mentioned Paris, Ontario. It was in the Brantford region. Home sales, typically 40 to 50,000 below asking. So the homes that are selling below asking if they sell at all, because a lot of homes can't sell. So even though you have all of this positive price pressure and you have a low supply, homes are not selling, or they're selling below asking. I hope you understand how broken that means Ontario actually is. Real bad. And you can come out west and you can live for much cheaper. You know, you can still have a really nice home in areas of Alberta for $350,000, $300,000, $350,000 or less. In Saskatchewan, it's even better. You can buy fixer-uppers out here for $50,000, $75,000 if you're someone on your own. You get in a nice little house, fix it up for yourself, nice and cheap. You do a lot of the work yourself. If you're a family looking for a place, $200,000, $150,000, $200,000 will buy you a decent home. You're not going to get that in Saskatoon or Regina, but you don't want to live there anyway. You don't want to live there anyway. You want to live outside those urban centers. You can still do really well. If you want to live in a palace, it's going to cost you about $300,000, but you'll find palaces for that price, like literal beautiful homes, and the work to go along with them, sustain them with a lower cost of living and much more tax efficiency. I mean, the level of services in rural Saskatchewan, I'm constantly blown away all over again. You look at some of these small towns where I lived in Ontario, the tax base was huge. And the only thing that was really nice was the municipal office. Great, big, beautiful building. But the parks weren't that great. You know, the internal services weren't that great. Fees were high, rules out the wazoo. The small town, like you take a town like Tisdale or Melfort or Nipawin or Humboldt, any of these northeastern Saskatchewan towns, you go look at their arenas, you go look at their pools, you go look at their outdoor parks. Like, we sometimes go into Melfort and there's a splash pad park there. Oh my God, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Kids everywhere, baby bumps all over the place, demographics stable. And just the level of service delivery is just, it's incredible compared to what I'm used to in Ontario. The roads, the grid roads in Saskatchewan, all the gravel roads are graded constantly. Like, the graders never stop grading. Most of them are in great shape all the time. Not to mention the paved roads. In Ontario, as soon as you get off a major highway, it's just pothole city. Like, the difference is visceral once you see it. Saskatchewan's a great choice. Wyatt is a hardcore neocon, but he's still young. He'll probably come around. Yeah, he is. He's definitely a neocon, for sure. I think he's genuine. I have a soft spot for that kid. I mean, there's enough people that take the mickey out of him, the Jeremy McKenzies of the world. They take the mickey out of him all the time. Some of the memes he shared with me, like the carrot top memes, that's the other thing. For a guy that's 25 years old, man, does he ever get the mickey taken out of him. And he rolls with it. And he actually is able to, he's able to laugh at himself. And he's able to laugh at the jokes that are made at his own expense. I respect that. Baldness is inherited from the mother's side of the gene pool. So if that's the case, then my son shouldn't be bald. I don't think my daughter's going to be, because she's got more hair than the three of us in this house combined. She's got so much hair. Frank starts his own party. Frank never sleeps again. Probably. Your own party, yes. Yeah, you all think that's a great idea, don't you? You all want to create a job for me. You're all trying to give me work. Be prime minister, be president, be premier. You're all trying to give me a job. I don't want a job. This is enough of a job. It's stressful as it is. I went out to the kitchen this morning because we got some family here and stuff that flew in, and I was saying how instead of I was trying to do a recorded normal video, and I'm just like, it's just I'm not feeling it. So I think I'm just going to do a stream today, and we'll just go and we'll talk about the news, and we'll just go wherever it is. And one of my guests, they just looked at me and they're just like, it's not easy, is it? Like it weighs on you. It's heavy. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Just doing this part's heavy. Can you imagine if I was actually in politics? You people trying to give me a job. Maxime is a weffer. Maxime is irrelevant, even to the WEF or anybody. He's irrelevant. He's not going to lead anybody anywhere. He's not leading anybody to the promised land. He's not building anything. He's not interested in building anything. He's interested in keeping the not-for-profit funded and collecting a wage and keeping his expense account funded. They don't try to structurally build out the party. They don't try to gain electoral success. They're not actually out there to win. When we founded that thing, when I helped him found that thing, when Max and I used to collaborate, the idea was a people's party, a real party. One of the issues we were trying to address was the feeling within the Conservative Party that the people weren't being represented, that the convention, people were not able to air their views, not able to have their opinion, not feel respected. And we wanted to address that by creating a party constitution that would actually empower the people. Never happened. Like many things, the book that Maxime was supposed to have written, people don't remember. People are really short-sighted. They can't keep all this stuff together in their head. Part of the reason Max was on the outs with the Conservative Party was because of a book that he was writing. And a chapter got leaked to the press on supply management. And we know the Conservative Party of Canada likes their sacred cows. So this chapter on supply management, which I don't think was written by Max at all. I think it was written by his right-hand man. They leaked this chapter from this book, and then Max agreed to not publish the book at the Conservative Party's request, something that probably never happened because the book didn't exist, because we don't have the book to this day. It's 2025. If he was serious, first off, he wouldn't have lied about the book. Second of all, he would have wrote a book by now, but he's not serious. So much of the early narrative was just a complete and total myth. Mike to V-Dub, I voted PPC in 21, cons previous to 21, and now in 25, both disappointed me. Now I'm all for Western independence and a fresh political start. Federal Canadian politics is beyond hope of repair. Yeah, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. There are some, you get glimmers of hope from Poilievre periodically, and the fact is, every institution in this country came together, including the Conservative Party of Canada, I think in some ways, came together to derail the CPC's election run in 25. And I believe, like the whatever the hell it was called, that vote fairness committee or whatever they're supposed to call the electoral reform, whatever, that targeted his riding and ballooned the ballot to 110, and they're targeting this by-election that he's running in. They're going to do the same thing. The public sector unions, the bureaucracy, the Liberal Party, the media, the United States Podcasting, everybody was against Pierre Poilievre. Everybody. Including Jenny Byrne And a lot of the people in the conservative establishment, the insiders, not the people who run in the elections, but the people at the conservative fund, the people who pull the strings. I think if Pierre was allowed, or allowed himself, to just lead, you see glimmers of it. He did a video in Drumheller where they were talking about how in the prisons, they use drones to deliver drugs to the prisons. So they devise these chutes out the prison windows, and then the drones come along and they drop the drugs right in the prison and stuff. And if you watch that little clip, it's like, you know, there's campaign Polyev. There's Polyev the guy. Now, he's still a committed federalist. He's still, as far as I'm concerned, way offside when it comes to his opinion on Ukraine, and when it comes to foreign affairs, identical, virtually indistinguishable from the Liberal Party of Canada. He joined with the elbows up nonsense. Like there's so many problems there. Because he's a politician, he's playing politics, he's trying to win an election. You have to have a strategy, and don't hate the player, hate the game. He may not be the worst person in the world. He may not be the worst leader in the world. And the fact that so many factors came together to just undermine any hope the CPC had, I don't know. There's still a flame of hope there in my mind. But it's not my focus. And it wasn't my focus in the federal election. My passion and my hope, if there's any political hope at all, comes from the provinces. And I kind of watch Daniel Smith going from, she flirts with both sides of the fence, but also says that she's a committed federalist and that everything she's doing is within the context of Canada. And I just think that's a mistake, or it's a deliberate torpedoing or attempt to torpedo the entire separatist movement, which I think should be fostered. Even if the intention is to stay in Canada, you should foster the growth of an independence movement, because that's how Quebec has won, is by having a strong independence movement. And they've been able to bend Canada over to their will. Copy it. Don't frame everything in staying in Canada. There's no reason to. Quebec has proven there's no reason to frame all of your political misgivings in the context of federalism. Dangle leaving. Quebec does it. We should do it too. You and your wife are very wise to homeschool. It's pretty cool because they get her as a tutor all day, every day. There's no summer vacations. They get up. I shouldn't say they, because Grace is too young. My daughter's name is Grace. She's too young. But my son gets up and he does his lessons. It's a 12-month-a-year thing. Some days they have breaks. But they love it. And you can teach them, you teach them a curriculum. You teach them what you're supposed to teach them, but you can teach them so much more. So, he's already ahead of the game. He's not even coming into grade 1 yet. And he's already doing grade 1 stuff. It's so much better. There's no bullying. There's no worrying about the influence that you're getting. Some kids coming from abusive families and they bring that to school with them. You're not getting that. And there's people who say, well, they're not going to be socialized. They're not going to have any friends. Bogus. He's got all kinds of friends. There's other homeschoolers, and there's people who do the public school thing that he also hangs out with through extracurricular things. I went to public school. I know what that was all about. I went to public school in Oshawa, Ontario. I went to kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2, and I think a chunk of grade 3 there. I'd have to think about it. It was nothing but bullying. I was the kid with the Coke bottle glasses and the pants that were too small. I got sent to school in teal corduroy pants. You know what that does to a kid? Frank rhymes with a lot of different things like wank, dank, jank. I know it all. I heard it all. I used to have to, my lunch, people would try to steal my lunch. I used to like to play marbles. People were always trying to steal my marbles. I got in a lot of fights. And because of the fights, and because of maybe some of the ways it was handled by my mother, the school thought maybe I had anger problems. I was just getting bullied all the time. It sucked. I'm more resilient for it now, but would I have preferred to be home Would I have preferred to be in a more peaceful environment where I could just pursue my studies? I mean, when I went to high school, I used to skip class to go to the library so I could just read what I wanted to read. And I lucked out because I had teachers that once they figured out what I was doing, enabled me to do that very thing. And I spent an entire half day of school just sitting in the library pursuing my own studies with teachers trying to figure out how to pass me. I think my kids' experience, it's much more peaceful, it's much more stable, it's much more focused. I think it's a superior experience. It's just, and I'm willing, I said this to my wife and she's on board with it. Like, I'm willing, if I have to, I'll borrow myself into the ground. I'll sell my house. We'll move to a smaller place. Like, we'll do whatever we got to do, but we're going to finish it this way. We're going to finish it this way. We're going to go to at least grade 8, and maybe for high school, we give them the option. If they want to go that way, they can go that way, or we can finish it. You know, give them the option. That might be a good balance, but I mean, we're a long way from that. I mean, my daughter's 3, and my boy's barely 6, so we got a lot of time. Raising livestock is better than growing plants for people. The issue with livestock is you can never leave it. It requires 24/7 care. You need to arrange with people to look after it if you want to get away. Plants, at least, when I was a farmer, that was what I was doing, was running a nursery. You got your season, you work real hard. In the winter, everything shuts down and your time is your own for 3 months. And that's what I used to do. I used to work 8-9 months of the year. I worked super hard. And then there were 3 months of downtime. That's where I did all my reading. That's where I did all my research. And that's where I did all the other stuff. And it was an awesome balance. I didn't have any income, but it was an awesome balance. And, you know, you just work really hard in the summer times and make it out. I never had any weekends. All through the summer, people would be doing things and we would just be working. That's all we ever did was work. And we weren't miserable. We were happy. But, you know, the first time I started having weekends again was when I moved out here. All of a sudden I had weekends. What do you even do with a weekend? And to this day, weekends don't mean anything to me. Like, one day is the same as another day. There's not that differentiation. I'm not judging anybody that, you know, you work 5 days a week and you got your weekend and you love it and you're a weekend warrior. Good for you. It's just, it's not my experience of things. Oh, man. Chat's skipping all over the place. Okay. My grandkids go to a French immersion school. We are not French. Small school in BC seems to be a little better. I've heard that. There are options. Like, I mean, there are other schooling options. Schools are beginning to return to sanity. See Alberta's new ministerial order today banning sexually explicit books in libraries pushed by parents. Yeah, man. I mean, that seems to be common sense stuff. Like, why are your kids reading about that? I can't believe there's actually people out there that would put their names to activism to keep that stuff in the school. I mean, we had the same problem here in Saskatchewan with the public school. Another reason for homeschooling is, even though I think the public education system in Saskatchewan is superior to that in Ontario and BC, Soji's not here, they're still making inroads, especially down in Regina, which is the unholy capital of Saskatchewan, is Regina. That's where the poison has established itself and is trying to seep out into everything else in this province, where they got like transgender pregnant people coming in and talking to elementary school kids. They're giving out pamphlets on absolutely sick deviants. That happened down there that actually gave rise to a new political party. It was a flash in the pan, but like, it was such a controversy, these handouts to 15-year-olds. I don't even want to talk about the material. It was just disgusting. Completely aberrant. It's here too. You know, but it's just not well entrenched. But like, if you don't nip it in the bud, it'll just keep coming. We got a parliamentarian or a legislature member here raising 2 kids, trans. That's an NDP member of the House, or whatever you want to call it, the legislature. The NDP is not the NDP of Romano. It's not social credit under Tommy Douglas. It's infected with the exact same radicalism that came from Jagmeet Singh's NDP. Which is why as much as, you know, there's certain problems I have with the Sask party, I'm desperately afraid of splitting the vote because of a couple thousand, even though the SAS party won by 12% of the vote. This is the crazy thing. 12-point spread over the NDP. 2,000 votes in 4 ridings changed to the other party, and the NDP would have had a majority government with only 42 to 43% of the vote. And that's something that's happened in Saskatchewan numerous times in the past. Before the Progressive Conservatives and the Liberals dissolved and formed the SAS party, the majority of people voted against the NDP, but the NDP got 80% of the seats in the legislature. I didn't move here for that to happen again. I didn't come here to see the same thing that happened to Ontario happen here. I'll stick to the Maritimes. Yeah, I looked at the Maritimes. There was reasons to look that way, but there was also reasons not to. There are areas of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia and PEI that have really good values. I worry that they're outnumbered. Some of the places I looked at were in outnumbered regions. I used to have a job surveying for the Department of Agriculture in Nipawin, Saskatchewan a long time ago now. Really good land up here. It's just frozen most of the time. Care Bear says, "Hey Frank, nice to see you live." Care Bear. I don't know if I've ever seen your name in the chat before. Welcome, if you're still here. It's property taxes that kill homeowners. They're so high, municipalities are spending crazy on stuff. Yeah, it's like once you pay your mortgage off, you realize you still have to pay rent. Keith, my brother, says North Oshawa, new matchbox-sized townhouses advertised as starting at $970,000. Good luck. I mean, are they selling, bro? And are they selling at that price? Or are they selling lower? Because everything I'm seeing in Ontario is that they're just not fetching. It's just not going smooth anymore. Even Highway 11 is pothole city. Yep. Jilly Bean says there are farmers too that won't drive their grain trucks on the gravel roads when they're in bad shape. Yeah, I just think the gravel roads are in stellar shape compared to Ontario. I mean, you seldom even run into washboarding. I got my house overlooking the ocean for $70,000, 5-minute walk to the beach. Well, I bet you it's worth a lot more now. Maybe I'm wrong. Where are you? If it's still that cheap. The Freedom Pines. Good to see you. You popped into the Clyde stream. You and a couple other people are one of the reasons I should just buy the StreamYard license. Now that we haven't had a single drop frame in 2 hours and 27 minutes. We haven't had any frame drops. So that means that people like you, Freedom Pines, if I buy that StreamYard license, I can bring you in here and we can start doing conversations. I need to just pull the trigger. I need to buy that license. It's not like it's a write-off. I just need to do it. Good to see you in here. Leaving Canada for a cheaper third world country that's affordable is now a reality for a lot of people. I mean, I can understand that play. Just, if shit hits the fan and you're a sliver minority in another country, in-group preference is a thing, and in-group preference takes precedence in the midst of crisis. And I don't know, it usually doesn't work out for minorities, but we have a basket of choices to make for our families' futures, and none of them are necessarily ideal. So it's a judgment call. Shelley Ford says, Frank, no fear. How do you make change? Get back in the game. Yes, it is corrupt, but how is that ever going to change if we don't stand strong in the system that needs to change? Correct? Well, Shelley, you have a point. I don't think it's my time yet. Plus, we're in between elections anyway, so I don't think it's my time. I think the next 6 months from this point forward, for what we're doing here, and I say we, I mean the royal we, you guys, me, what we're doing here, is going to look a lot like what's already been done. Just maybe more of it, maybe a little tighter, maybe more streaming. Maybe more streaming. Jenny Byrne interfered with local EDAs and prevented candidates from doing interviews and talking to podcasters. Yep. The Conservative Party of Canada has a fear problem. They're not modern. They're afraid of being modern. I think Poilievre did some podcasting, but they want to control the messaging. They're so afraid that somebody's going to say something that the mainstream media is going to be able to run with. They fear it. And what they should be doing is engaging with it. Say the thing that's going to outrage them. Keep your face in the media and do battle with them. They're not your friends. You're never going to win them over, and you're never going to win over the voters that they represent. You don't have to be balls out like Trump. You don't have, because the Trumpian way will not sell in Canada. It has to be a bit more sophisticated here. It has to be a bit more thoughtful here. But if you're not fighting the media and you're not saying things that irritate them, you're not doing the job right. And the CPC, they do great when they're expansive, but then they get in election mode and they shell up. They're like turtles. They just draw in and they try to hang on and they lose. Candidates should be able to speak. They should be able to express different points of view. They should be able to cater to different voting bases, because the wants and needs of somebody in rural Alberta is not going to be the same as the wants and need of somebody living in downtown Toronto. And only the candidates, theoretically at least, would be able to tailor their messages to those individual demographics. The CPC is always too afraid. My homeschool son worked with me half days from 13 on, red seal journeyman carpenter at 19, then went on to graduate from BCIT with honors. Homeschooling is awesome. Yes, sir. I'm actually thinking about that. My son has all of these plans he's been telling me about. He's going to be a cop. He's going to be a fireman. He's going to be a mechanic. He's going to be a heavy equipment operator. He wants to have a homestead with livestock. Those are just the ones that I can think of. And I said to him, well, you know, we can maybe pursue one or two of those things together. Because I know working with my dad was one of the best things that ever happened in my life. I loved working with my dad. So it'd be kind of cool to build something with my son. Maybe the homesteading thing, I don't know. There's only so much time in a day. Maybe he'll become part of this one time. The kids come in here, and I've got a bunch of videos that they've made on daddy's stuff. It's pretty funny listening to them talk. They recite different cartoons and things and pound the desk. And yeah, my daughter in particular, she's a very loud speaker, and she likes to pound the desk when she's talking. I don't know if she's imitating me or not. I changed my name. Been following you a long time, Carrie O. Glad to have you here, whatever you call yourself. I moved from a small town in Niagara, and the cities were allowing apartments to be built with no parking. They got around it by saying they would supply a Tesla and electric scooters for the tenants. The one that's really concerning to me is the apartments that are being built without kitchens. So you don't even have the ability to prepare your own food. Like, that's just, we're weakening. We're weakening as a species. It's not just the AI thing and the robotics thing and like all of these dependencies we're creating. It's the fact that we don't even know how to cook anymore. Independence for Alberta and Saskatchewan all the way. We need to get off this sinking ship. I think we do. You know, I really do. I think we need to start thinking big and start thinking different before it's too late. Because Ottawa is going to sink us all. All right, where are we? We've been staring at Erdogan for a long time here. Let's see what else we got. This one was fun. Root. The NATO guy, these warmongers. China could push Russia to attack NATO member in Taiwan distraction ploy. One of the more ridiculous headlines I've read in a long time. I've been meaning to cover this one. China doesn't need Russia to it. Like, how stupid is this? How stupid is How stupid is the public that they would promote this idea and expect the public to swallow it? Russia's not going to attack a NATO member. It would be stupid to do so, completely against their strategic interests. It's just not going to happen. I mean, I think it's more likely that NATO will do something stupid that triggers a response, and then maybe in that case they do. But it's way outside of Russia's strategic interest to ever touch a NATO member. China doesn't need Russia to fly cover for an invasion of Taiwan. I mentioned this when the bombing of Fordo was happening in the old hot phase of the war in the Middle East, which I think is going to come again. I don't think it's over. I think Israel and Iran are going to get back at it, and I don't think it's going to take too long. And it depends on the internal politics of Israel, whether Netanyahu can stave off an election or whether he can win an election. It looks like he's going to win, according to, this was a while ago now, but a new poll shows Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition cruising to a victory with even more seats than they won the last election. If there's one thing you can say about Bibi, he is a survivor. Multiple scandals and charges and arrest warrants and all kinds of things, and there he is. He's still leading Israel, so he might win the election, but those domestic affairs might slow things down for a while. Where were we? We were here. One of the things I mentioned is that if America gets embroiled in a regime change war with Iran, reserves of American armaments are very thin, and American arms are very expensive to replenish. As a matter of fact, there it is. Patriot missile stockpile, a fraction of what Pentagon needs as Trump arms Ukraine. And you read through this. This one didn't cover it. But it's not just the Patriots. Those THAADs, THAAD, those missile systems that knock ballistics out of the sky, very expensive and not produced in high numbers. So America has all of this technical sophistication. They have the B-2s. They have the F-35s. They've got all these countermeasures when it comes to ballistic missiles, but they don't have a large stockpile of those weapons. Neither does Israel. And over the course of the Ukraine war and over the course of the war that's been prosecuted by Israel, those stockpiles have been depleted even further. So the Americans are already thin. Sure, they have massive capacity for conventional destruction, but they don't have sustain because they're not producing an abundance of the cheap stuff. They're producing little amounts of the expensive stuff. Whereas the Russians can produce cheap artillery, they can produce cheap weaponry out the wazoo, and so can China. So the point being that if America got bogged down in a regime change war in Iran, it would take most of their power focused on that effort, which would leave them short in the South China Sea, which has already happened with the carrier groups moving to the Middle East. The South China Sea doesn't have anything in it. So you don't really need NATO to be attacked by Russia for China to have a distraction to go for Taiwan. All you need is a Middle East war that the Americans get involved in, and presto, the opportunity opens up for China to do just that. Now, this is interesting. China unveils Bow High Sea Monster jet-powered flying ship, stuns military analysts. This is just from today. It reminds me of that thing. If you go on YouTube, there's a bunch of YouTubers that travel around the world, and they go and they see this wreck of a plane that the Soviets built, this big behemoth that's just rotting in a field now. And you think to yourself, like, what utility is there in a plane that can fly that close to the water? Like, what's this all about? This is about Taiwan. Flying below radar, flying below many of the existing countermeasures at a rapid speed to deploy. It's a big boat. A big plane, it's a plane boat, to deploy troops rapidly to Taiwan. China's military is designed around projecting power into the South China Sea locally in the Pacific region, Philippines, Taiwan. Think locally to China. It's not about projecting power across the Pacific at the United States or some kind of Red Dawn invasion. They're doing that through political means. That's a whole other separate conversation, through the drug war, through the money laundering, through immigration, through foreign buying up land and buying up real estate. It's a different type of war. It's a non-kinetic war that they're waging. It's psychological, going after our cultural institutions, taking our movies and our literature and making it into the destruction, the demographic destruction that you see, the destruction of the family. It's psychological operations, and the Chinese have been very good at it. Their kinetic forces, outside of their nuclear deterrent, are designed around projecting power into the immediate region around China and having missile capabilities to neutralize U.S. ships and carriers. Because again, U.S. military power and countermeasures are thin. They're not extensive. There's not a huge stockpile, and it's been drained by 3.5 years. It's crazy to me. Arms shipments to Ukraine. Not even all the arms shipments are making it to the front lines. A lot of those weapons that are leaving the American military thin in inventory are ending up on the black market and being sold to America's strategic enemies. This is the war that they all universally back, and the war that now Trump is going to send arms to. He said he wasn't going to, and then he changed his mind, and it's part of America first now. To not just support the war effort, but to support the Ukrainian black market. You know, taxpayers in the West are paying the wages for government officials that have suspended elections in Ukraine. There's a whole class of people in Ukraine that are getting filthy rich while their sons are dying in mass on the battlefield. And our politicians, conservatives and liberals, support it without end. And the irrelevant NDP under Singh. At any rate, that's one aspect of it, but their military forces, their amphibious forces, they are designing their military around the taking of Taiwan. And all it takes, and I've highlighted this before, if you can get America distracted sufficiently, they'll just go in and take it. It'll be a fait accompli. There will be nothing the West can do. So this notion, Rutt's notion, that China needs Russia to attack a NATO member is just ridiculous. What do we got next? Ah, yes. So this is one of the impacts. Are we going to do this right now? I don't have to worry about a copyright strike. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it.
Just don't be safe on this way. I can't live without her.
Last time you were in this facility, you were in no condition to supervise your own convalescence.
I intend to oversee my own care from this point forward.
What is troubling you, my son? I'm aware of the suit's limitations and of the exasperation you must be experiencing. Something disturbing must have occurred on Murkana. Some occurrence you will...
Honestly, it doesn't matter if you can hear it. The dialogue is actually quite good, so it'd be kind of handy if you could hear it. The point I'm trying to make with this is all AI. This is all artificial generated. An animator never worked on this. This was all generated by artificial intelligence. And it's only going to get better. The eye movements are still a little glassy. The camera movements are still a little bit clunky, and you'll see this. There's a lot of really impactful, hard-hitting AI stuff. Like, it's getting really good. The level of disruption that this is going to bring to Fiverr, animation, movie making. Think video games. Instead of having a whole team of developers working on video games, you're going to have a bunch of video cards. Maybe there will be some coders that are working on the engines, but eventually AI might be able to tackle that too. So I seen a headline, and again, it's one of those things I've been meaning to talk about, but I never get to, about 9,000 people being laid off by Microsoft. And this is on the heels of many other batches of layoffs that they've implemented. And every single article you read talks about trimming management, making efficiencies within the company. It's all dressed in this wording, and I think it's all down to artificial intelligence. People's jobs are being replaced with rapidity as the quality of these things gets better. Like think video game cutscenes. Is this better or worse than most cutscenes that come out of AAA gaming with $100 million budgets? You're going to be doing it for a fraction of the cost, and that's not to, and that's not to dissuade from the or not to take away from the other effects, which is data analysis. So instead of paying a team of people to comb through data sets, if they're digitized, you'll be able to tell AI to look for the thing that you want it to look for, and it will deliver the results to you in seconds versus the weeks it would take a team. This disruption's already underway. And it's kind of crazy to me because if you just meditate on it for a little while, you'll see that it affects the video game industry, the movie making industry, data analysis, the legal industry, lawyers, real estate transactions, accountants, bookkeepers, voice-over actors, people who read Kindle books and ebooks and make audio books. They're all out of business. If they're not already out of business, they're going to be out of business soon. There will always be a niche market for human-generated content. People are going to want that. It's one of the reasons when you go to my Twitter bio, I say I don't use AI in any of my stuff, and I won't. Because in terms of attracting a viewer base and keeping it, I think there's an opportunity for people who are just going to want human stuff. It's just going to get harder and harder and harder to discern reality from fiction. It's happening so fast. It's such a huge sea change. It's just coming at us so fast. I lost track of the chat. It's because it's in a different window. It does make a person sad with what Trump has done with the Epstein thing. Mm-hmm. It's pretty crushing, actually. It's pretty crushing. And his attitude about it, when people ask questions about it, his attitude is so terrible. It just adds fuel to the fire. And that's just one thing. There's been a series of disappointments come out of the administration. They got AI performances on America's Got Talent. So there you go. You're being socially conditioned for it. Wow, man. I didn't even know that binary. I had no idea that was the thing. Sandy Klein, during COVID, I had the cops called on me. I was only advocating for my mother that lived in a care facility. I will never forget what the government did to us people. Yeah, in order to keep the elderly safe, they just got locked away from their families and left alone to die in the dark. Over a respiratory infection. You know, I know a guy. He was 78 at the time. 77, 76, somewhere in that neighborhood. Quadriplegic. Diabetic. Paraplegic. Confined to a bed. So overweight. Best he could do was get in the motor scooter. Colostomy bag. So many issues stacked against him. Got COVID and survived. One of the most immunocompromised, comorbidity-laden people you could possibly imagine came out of it no problem. And we all know now that the vast majority of people who contracted it had similar experiences. And we locked millions of people inside their homes, and many of them died there in the old age facilities when they probably would have rather have seen their families one last time at the risk of contracting a death which was coming in very nearby anyway. It's incredible that horror show now in the rear view mirror. It's receded from view, right? But it happened, and it shouldn't be forgotten, but it happened. There was like 2 years that were tied up in that. When I sold my house and began my move, it wasn't over yet. Saskatchewan had just lifted its mandates. And out of all the madness, Saskatchewan was the least mad of all, but it was still mad. Saskatchewan had just lifted, and there was a very real concern in my mind that as I traveled across the country, that going through Manitoba, I wouldn't be able to stop for gas. Like, I was scared, man. I was scared for my family, scared for myself. Doug Ford was talking about going door to door and pulling people out of their homes to force needles in their arms. Justin Trudeau was openly saying, should we tolerate these people? Should they exist? You had front pages of the Toronto Star calling for the death of the unvaccinated. People thrown out of work. It all happened recently in Canada. And people want to be proud of this so-called democracy. They want to be proud of our Westminster system. They want to be proud of the system that is Canada that generated that outcome. I can't get there. Been back to being smoky here. I think that's about all my voice is going to handle, folks. I don't want to start hacking in your ears. But I'm glad we did this together. And I don't know. It seemed to work really good. So I'm going to think about how to do more of it. I'll still be doing the normal videos, but I know this is kind of rough, but maybe there's room for a newscast on this channel. We'll see. I hope you guys have a good day, and thanks for joining in. Appreciate you being here.